Out the eyes. All right. Are we live? Yes. All right. I'm going to give a few minutes for everybody to start rolling in here. Yesterday was amazing, guys. I know so many of you are first-time cold plungers, and you actually, no pun intended, but broke the ice yesterday. So congratulations. This is so awesome. We have big special guest that was supposed to be on today, but for scheduling purposes, they got moved to tomorrow. So you definitely want to be here tomorrow. We got both special guests coming on tomorrow to give you some words of encouragement. I saw some really creative cold plunging on. You guys were tagging me on some amazing cold plunges. Who was the woman in Mexico? Renata in Mexico couldn't get one of the plunge pop-ups, so she actually went and got a beer tub and did her cold plunge in a beer tub. I saw people doing them in cattle troughs. That's what I do when I'm in Colorado. I went to Tractor Supply and I bought the $165 cattle trough that you feed cattle out of, and I just fill it up with glacier spring water. Love the creativity, guys. Lots of bathtubs going on. I saw barrel cold plunges, so you guys have gotten really creative. So here's what I want to do. In the next 24 hours, at the end of the challenge tomorrow, I'm going to give away a Plunge XL tub. So the Plunge XL is the one that I use. It's the $7,000 big mama. It's got the integrated motor. It's got this, the top so you can put it outside. It's the big white one with the 45-degree slant in the back. If you saw Ryan from Plunge yesterday, it's the one he has at his headquarters that he was in. I am going to give it away to the most creative post that you tag me in cold plunging over the next 24 hours. So if you get in there with your kids, or if it's husband and wife for the first time, or you've got a funky plunge like a cattle trough or a beer tub, I want to see it. And the most creative cold plunge, I'm going to give you a $7,000 Plunge XL tub, and I'm going to ship it right to your house for no cost. All right. We got a bunch of giveaways today. I want to make this as exciting and impactful as possible. I'm not just reserving this for my VIPs. I'm reserving this for anybody on YouTube, on the Facebook group. Just tag at Gary Brecka, just my first and last name. Show me how creative you're getting with the cold plunge. I want to see you, your families, your husbands, your wives. If you've got a funky creative plunge, like a beer tub or a cattle trough, I want to see it. I'll pick the most creative. I'll post and thank you. And I'm going to send you a $7,000 Plunge XL. I got a ton of swag giveaways today. I've got a ton of plunge pop-up giveaways today. One lucky winner is going to get the ultimate human flexible. They can't keep these things in stock on Amazon. It's the hottest item in the world. It's an ultimate human flip-flop. We're going to give a bunch of those away today too. So I got a bunch of questions yesterday. I had my team kind of group them. So I just want to address what I thought were maybe the top 5 most commonly asked questions about cold plunging. But most of all, I really want to thank you guys for giving me your time, your trust and confidence, because the next 2 days is going to be amazing. And yesterday, I know we had thousands and thousands of first-time cold plungers. And then in our VIP group, I got to have a lot of direct feedback with folks, and I heard some really incredible stories about how cold plunging has changed people's lives. Remember, you don't have to spend any money to be a part of this cold plunge, other than if you have a bathtub and you got to go to 7-Eleven and get a couple bags of ice. You can also do it in a cold shower if you want to start that way. I got some really interesting shower photos posted yesterday too. So I'm just excited to see so many people getting fired up to take the plunge. So we talked yesterday about the 5 big benefits of cold plunging, right? And one of them was about elevating mood. And people said, what's the science behind, elevating mood? And remember that when we expose ourselves, when we stress our body, we talked yesterday about hormesis. When you stress the body and it returns by strengthening, right? I mean, it's the same concept of exercise. You tear a muscle, it grows back larger, and therefore you're stronger after exercise because of muscle hypertrophy or muscle hyperplasia. The same thing happens in the human body. And, when we do these hormetic stresses, we're not trying to make ourselves adapt to the stress. We're actually trying to short-term stress our body, shock the body, and then take the stress off. That's where the benefit comes from. It's like if somebody hit around the corner and went boom every day that you came into the office, but you knew they were hiding around the corner every single day in the same place, then it would no longer scare you. Your body would no longer respond to that stimulus. So with cold plunging, there is no evidence that colder is better or longer is better. And, you know, a lot of people are really excited to hear this. So 50 to 55 degrees, maybe 48 to 55 degrees, 3 minutes minimum, 6 minutes maximum. That's all you need, guys. You do not need to be in the 30s. You do not need to be in the cold plunge for 15 or 20 minutes. I've actually seen cold plunge challenges where they challenge people to stay in longer. You know, longer is not better. It's like anything else. You know, more is not necessarily better. The longer you stay in, the higher the risk of actually dropping your core body temperature. And we don't want to drop our core body temperature. We actually want the peripheral vasoconstriction to save our organs the way that we would if something happened natural. We slipped through the ice, we fell underneath of the ice. We would want our veins in our periphery and our vascular system to constrict, to push that warm blood into the core, force the oxygen to the brain, the liver, the lungs, the pancreas, the kidneys in an effort to save our life. We want to mimic that, and then we just want to get out. We don't want to become cold adaptive. You know, again, we're not trying to become Eskimos. You know, there are a lot of stories out there in the public domain. You can look these up where people have actually slipped through the ice. They've gone under the water in cold water, and it's taken up to 35, 45. There's one that was even documented at 90 minutes underneath of the ice and underwater, obviously unconscious. And they get these people out and they get them to the hospital. They warm them up and they survive, and they actually have no brain damage. Why is that? How is that even possible? You can't go without oxygen for more than 4 minutes without sustaining zero oxygen for more than 4 minutes without starting to sustain some mild level of brain damage. So how is it that people can slip under the ice, be under there for 35 or 45 or 50 minutes and get taken out and somehow survive and have no cognitive deficits thereafter? The reason is cold shock proteins and the peripheral vasoconstriction, the activation of brown fat that happens when you get into a cold plunge. You know, the body is just an amazing, very resilient machine. And when we understand how we can tap into some of these hormetic stresses, those of you that participated on my water fasting challenge, what's water fasting? It's a hormetic stress. We put a stress on the body, and that stress is no food, no caloric intake. And how does the body respond? It actually switches into a state of ketosis. It starts to use fat, beta hydroxybutyrate, as a fuel source. And now that it's in this state of ketosis, what happens? The inflammation begins to drop. And once the inflammation drops and you've been in ketosis for a while, what else happens? The body starts to release stem cells. And those stem cells go around and begin to repair tissue. And then when it's looking for food and we're not feeding it, where does it get its food? It gets its food by eating itself. And it eats the most useless portion first. It eats the weakest part of our body first. And what is that? Those are senescent cells, or what we call zombie cells. Senescent cells are cells in your body that are no longer able to perform their function, right? I mean, right now in your bloodstream, you've got red blood cells that can no longer carry oxygen, but they're still living. You've got white blood cells that can no longer mount an immune defense, but they're still living. You've got platelets that can't carry growth factors, but they're still alive in your bloodstream. And so we'd like to get these kinds of cells out of the body and replace them with a younger, healthier version that can actually do its job. It's like having a company full of lazy employees that are still on your payroll, right? We'd like to get the lazy employees that aren't doing their job out and put somebody in that seat that's actually going to do their job. And this is what cellular autophagy is. And we use the hormetic stress of fasting to push ourselves into a state where we're in cellular autophagy, where we're actually consuming senescent cells, and the body actually recycles itself. It takes those cells that are useless and breaks them up into amino acids and feeds them to the skin. It feeds them to the heart. It feeds them to our metabolism and actually creates new red blood cells. It repairs muscle tissue. So a lot of these stressors, and a lot of when I design these challenges, they're number one, designed to be safe. And the number two, designed to give you the maximum benefit. I try to make them as close to costing zero as possible. And I want the outcome to be really profound so that you get used to challenging the body. You know, if you look at one of my, can you bring me one of my my swag boxes? You know, I have a saying. It's called aging is the aggressive pursuit of comfort. And I don't think that there's anything more truthful than that saying. As a population, as a society, we crave comfort. We regulate our body temperature. We regulate our interior temperature. We regulate the temperature in our house, our car, our office. We've been trained to think that we shouldn't get any sunlight, that sunlight is the devil. And so then we put chemicals on our skin to protect ourselves from sunlight. And then we actually have more damage from the chemicals we put on our skin than we do from the God-given sunlight that we should be exposing ourselves to every day. And so a lot of what I try to do when I design these challenges is to teach you that sometimes these stressors that we can put on our body have profoundly positive effects. The body is such an amazing God-given machine that when we actually understand how we can tap into some of the pharmacies that are naturally inside of our body, some of the abilities to improve our mood, improve our emotional state, strengthen our bodies, improve our digestion. A lot of these don't cost us anything. So I'm going to give one of these away today too. By the way, I don't know if you guys can see that. See the ultimate human? It's kind of like a sort of contrast there. I'm really, really proud of the team for building this. But if you get one of these swag boxes, you see right here, it says, aging is the aggressive pursuit of comfort, right? So none of you are aggressively pursuing comfort today. We're actually pursuing discomfort, right? And that's going to help us with the aging process. But what do we got in here? So in here, you get an ultimate human shaker. And then in this shaker seal, so you can actually really mix up those perfect aminos. You get an Echo water bottle, just all of my favorites. A little mixer here, because sometimes those perfect aminos are a little powdery, so this will help you mix them. I give you some perfect aminos. I give you Baja Gold sea salt. That's actually one of my favorite hacks. Baja Gold sea salt or Celtic salt, because it's got all those minerals in it. I give you my new Ultimate Human bars. That is actually guilt-free snacking or guilt-free meal replacement. I got them in a couple of flavors. And then I'll give you a t-shirt, or for women, I've got the jogging bras and whatnot. So, but aging is the aggressive pursuit of comfort. So none of us are going to age today because we're not pursuing comfort. But these hormetic stresses are just phenomenal for the body. So when we learn to use every few months, 3 or 4 months to use fasting, when we learn to use sunlight and breath work and grounding to improve our mood and get oxygen into our bodies and exercise our auxiliary muscles of respiration. And when we learn to use cold plunging as a way to elevate our mood, improve our emotional state. Why? Because I'm raising endorphins and raising the level of dopamine in the body. Remember, dopamine is the main neurotransmitter of behavior. Right? Serotonin is the main neurotransmitter of mood. You start to deplete serotonin, you start to dramatically affect mood. You start to deplete dopamine, you dramatically affect behavior. Because when you're dopamine depleted, you engage in dopamine-seeking behavior. So what's dopamine-seeking behavior? Anything that gives you a little dopamine reward. Believe it or not, Apple, the iPhone manufacturer, studied the release of dopamine with different wavelengths of light and different stimuli in the phone. And they actually designed the phone to be dopamine addictive. I know that sounds crazy and like it's a conspiracy theory, but it's patently true. Because when we look at our phone, we go, there's something interesting in there. There might be something cool in there. I could see somebody get hurt. I could see somebody do something really astounding. I could find out how to fix my relationship. I could find out how to raise my kids. All of that's just in that little tiny device in your hand. Every time that you open it and interact with it, you get a tiny little dopamine reward. So imagine getting 50 times that by just engaging in cold water immersion. Right? I mean, that feeling of just elation, joy, arousal, clear, cognizant, waking energy, good, healthy short-term recall, all because you have high levels of endorphins and high levels of dopamine. So again, when we get into that cold cold plunge, the first thing that happens is that peripheral vasoconstriction, dumping the oxygen into our core. The next thing that happens is the liver panics. And this is one of the reasons why they link cold shock proteins to the ability to survive extended periods under the water. Now, I pray that none of you guys ever fall through the ice and get stuck under the ice. But this is the reason why a lot of these people were able to survive. It was one of the first forays into the study of cold shock proteins from the liver. They release these cold shock proteins. They scour the body of free radical oxidation. They improve the rate of protein synthesis, which is muscle repair, which is why these help you repair muscle. Lin-28A and 28B, which we talked about yesterday, actually improve insulin sensitivity. And you can get all of this in 3 minutes of cold water. Lots of questions about thermogenesis. Remember, there's two main types of fat. There's different locations of fat around the body. You have visceral fat, you have body fat, but you have different types of fat. You have the white fat that we all know is on our periphery. You know, that's what we're used to seeing around our belly and the flanks of our arms and on the sides of our pecs and everywhere else on our body. That's white fat. But brown fat's a really special type of fat. Brown fat is capable of exchanging a calorie for heat. In fact, the definition of a calorie is that it's a measure of heat. It's the amount of energy measured in joules that it takes to raise 1 cubic centimeter of water 1 degree centigrade. So calories are a measure of heat. So when heat is leaving our bodies, what do you think is leaving your bodies? Calories. There is a cost, an energetic cost to raising your body temperature, and that cost is calories. Your body's going to take calories, your brown fat, and it's going to burn it for energy, and it's going to create heat from that, and it's going to raise your body temperature, and it's going to raise your body temperature beyond the ambient temperature. So if you're in a 75 or 80 degree room and you get in a 50-degree cold plunge and you bring your body temperature, not your core, but your peripheral body temperature down below ambient room temperature, how does your body raise it back to room temperature and then push it all the way to 98.6? It's burning brown fat. Right. And so you get this massive caloric expenditure, this major rise in dopamine, this major rise in endorphins. You get this peripheral vasoconstriction, you get the release of cold shock proteins, and it all costs you zero. So it's amazing that we can do this in the mornings. Let's get to some of the most commonly asked questions yesterday on YouTube. I also want to give a shout out to Michael Fullwood. He said, I've been cold plunging for 1.5 years, and I was able to beat my ADHD addictive personality with plunging, meditation, and Wim Hof breathing. I had an alcohol use disorder, and I've been sober for 6 months. Wow. Michael, I'm sending you a pop-up plunge. If you would just, if you're listening, Michael Fullwood, just give your information into the chat to my team, or just connect with my team in the chat, and they're going to send you a pop-up plunge. That's amazing. See, guys, we don't need chemicals. We don't need synthetics. We don't need pharmaceuticals. We need Mother Nature and what God gave us. I believe so much more in what God gave us than what man makes us. And I think that we become a society based on chemicals and synthetics and pharmaceuticals. We've forgotten about the ability of the human body to heal itself, the power that this has over this. And I just get goosebumps hearing some of these stories. Quincy Lennon, does eating anything just before an ice bath change the effects of human biological reactions? Does adding salt to anything for an ice bath either positively or negatively? Okay, so let me handle both of those separately. So the first question was if eating just before an ice bath changes the effects of human biological reactions. I assume what you're asking is, does it change the enzymatic reaction in the and eat that you can affect the enzymes in the stomach, and that is true. It's not true with cold plunging. Remember, we're not lowering our core body temperature. Unless you're underwater drinking the water, we shouldn't be trying to lower our core body temperature. There's enzymes in the body that work on basically something called a lock and key mechanism. So think about a Pac-Man and a slice of cake, right? So that Pac-Man has that triangular shaped mouth. And if you were to fit a perfect triangular shaped piece into their mouth, we call this the lock and key mechanism. This is kind of how enzymes work in the body. Different enzymes have a lock, and the key, the nutrient, fits that lock, and that enzyme is able to degrade it. Those enzymes are sensitive to temperature. So if you drink ice water and eat, sometimes it can affect the enzymatic capacity to break down that food. So this does not happen with cold plunging. Again, we're not swallowing the water and we're not lowering our body temperature, so it wouldn't affect our enzymes or our lock and key mechanism. Does adding salt to anything for an ice bath either positively or negatively? I think what you're asking me is if we add something like an Epsom salt, also called magnesium chloride, or dead sea salts or something to our ice bath, would that affect you positively or negatively? I'm not aware of any negative effects. Remember that what's interesting about cold water is that the colder the water, the more gas can be dissolved in the water. There's higher oxygen concentrations. There's higher dissolved gas in cold water than there is in warm water. But with regard to sodium, using things like magnesium chloride or Epsom salts, those are fine to put into your cold plunge. Check with your cold plunge manufacturer to see if adding Epsom salt to your cold plunge will actually destroy the motor, because the fan and some of the rubber seals are affected by magnesium chloride. It kind of cakes around the seal, and it can actually damage the seal over a couple of months. So that's the only downside. When I'm in Colorado, I will sometimes take magnesium chloride and Epsom salt and put it in the ice bath and kind of stir it around because I'm not worried about the motor. Newton, Gary, I'm all in. If I'm currently in Cyprus, Greece, even a cold shower is too hot. No cold plunges facilities either. What is the closest thing that I can do? See if there's a restaurant that'll give you a bucket of ice. See if the hotel will give you a bucket of ice. See if they sell ice they got to have their version of 7-Eleven in Cyprus, Greece. So see if you can actually get ice and put it in a tub. The interesting thing about buying a bunch of bags of ice and putting it in your tub, believe it or not, if you guys have ever done this, is it's good for 3 or 4 days. And it doesn't stay, as cold as the first day that you plunged. Your first plunge will obviously be the coldest, but you'd be surprised how a tub actually insulates that cold water, and it can actually stay nice and cold for 3 or 4 days, again, depending on the amount of heat. But see if you can get ice from a restaurant, see if you can get ice from a hotel, or see if you can get buy ice bags at a whatever the Cyprus, Greece version of 7-Eleven is. But by the way, I'm very jealous. Greece is one of my favorite places in the world. My daughter, Madison, is actually in Mykonos right now. And so she keeps sending me pictures of her and all of her girlfriends having fun in Mykonos, Santorini. I love that part of the world. As a firefighter, in terms of sauna cold plunge combo, do you have any more research on the toxin and mental benefits? Yes. So this might be a long answer, but remember there's 2 types of sweating that the body goes through, right? We have passive sweating and we have active sweating. Passive sweating is where we sweat to reduce body temperature. So if you got out of your chair right now and you went for a brisk walk and you started to sweat, that's your body trying to lower your body temperature. Active sweating is where you sweat to eliminate waste. So if you've ever actually had the cold sweats when you had the flu, you're in a cool room under the covers and 65 degrees in the room, but you're still shivering and you're sweating. That's active sweating. This is where your liver begins to use the skin as a secondary route of waste elimination. And so we've all, unfortunately experienced active sweating because at some point in our life, we probably had the flu or the seasonal allergies, and we start to actively sweat. This is the difference between infrared saunas and dry saunas. Dry saunas cause passive sweating. Infrared saunas, some research shows that it can solicit active sweating. So you actually eliminate slightly more waste in an infrared sauna than you do in a dry sauna. I still encourage you to sauna if you can. Contrast therapy is where you go from hot to cold. So again, we don't want this temperature gradient to be super dramatic, right? This is why I don't encourage people to go from high heat saunas that are over 180 degrees Fahrenheit, to really low temperature cold plunges below 40 degrees. that temperature gradient is too much for our cell membrane to handle and can actually crack and fracture the cell membrane. Remember, if you actually look at a cell, in the wall of the cell, surrounding that cell, is what's called a phospholipid bilayer. It's a fancy way of saying an outer and inner layer made of phospholipids, fats, for lack of a better word. So imagine this cell surrounded by a thin layer of fat. And through these ion channels in the cell wall, we move nutrients in and out, right? And so if that fat were really, really warm and sort of liquidy, for lack of better words, and then you submerged it in ice and froze it, the rapid change in that temperature can fracture the cell wall. So if you do contrast therapy, I recommend 20 minutes in a dry sauna, followed by a minute to no more than 3 minutes in a cold plunge. Interestingly, when we did our sleep challenge, some of the people that actually reported having the most active mind at night, they were able to do contrast therapy, even with your home shower, and it dramatically improved their sleep score. And what was the contrast therapy? They got into the shower, they ran it warm, they stood in there and they did their whatever their shower business is. Then they turned the shower as hot as they could stand it. They ran it on the back of their neck and down their spine. And then they stepped out of that water stream, turned it as cold as the shower would go, and stepped back into the water for 1 minute and ran the water all over their body. They dried out and then they went off and got in bed. That broke that cycle of what we call catecholamines, which are the really active neurotransmitters in the mind, causing our mind to kind of race, ruminate on thoughts, overthink things. You know, a lot of you have the same condition that I used to have, where you lay down to go to sleep at night and your mind wakes up and your brain just starts clicking through the day, just thinking about the most innocuous little thoughts, depriving you of getting into deep sleep. So contrast therapy before bed is one of my favorite sleep hacks. It's one of the sleep hacks that I use when I'm on the road and I'm trying to adjust to a new time zone. And you're trying to get on to that time zone. So you're either putting yourself to bed very, 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 very late, according to your normal sleep schedule, or you're trying to put yourself to bed early, according to your normal sleep schedule, because you're somewhere in a different time zone. I find that contrast therapy is one of the best ways to break the cycle of the day and start your sleep routine. Huge shout out to Kyle Moranka. Today was my 255th consecutive plunge. I thought it said 255th birthday. I was like, you definitely won the cold plunge challenge. Today was my 255th consecutive plunge. Kyle, we would love to send you some swag. This was amazing. So connect with my team, give them your size, and I'm going to get you out some Ultimate Human swag gear. Ken Galadan, Ken Galadina. I hope I'm saying that right, Ken. I apologize. My team's holding it up behind the camera. Ken Galadina. Can I put chlorine in my 110-gallon portable plunge so I don't have to change the water every day? Try dead sea salt. Try dead sea salt or magnesium chloride. Try that before you use chlorine. Remember, chlorine concentrations are higher in cold water than they are in warm water. There's less evaporation in cold water than there is in warm water, and therefore the concentrations of those chemicals stay high. We talked yesterday about the experiment I did showing how quickly chlorine goes transdermal. So my preference would be that you don't use chlorine, that you use something like a dead sea salt or magnesium chloride, Epsom salt. High amounts of Epsom salt will keep algae and other contaminants from growing. The other thing that you want to do if you're outside is cover your cold plunge if you can, right? Because light and the warmth from the sun will actually help grow algae faster than if you have a cold plunge that's protected from the light. How many bags of light will you estimate is needed for the pop-up to get to 50 degrees? I used 6, and I think they were 6 10-pound bags. I'll have to ask my son when he comes back in here, but I think it was 6 10-pound bags that I got in yesterday. There were 3 of them in there at first. We swirled them around, and then I put 3 more in right when I got in. So my understanding is 6. So that would be, what, 60 pounds. We have our plunge set at 50 degrees, and it says around 51 to 52 with the Sacramento heat. Should my goal be to get the temperature lower or to stay in longer than 3 minutes? Hubby wants to drop the temp, and maybe we need that because it doesn't take my breath away, but I do have to do breath work when I get in for the first 10 to 15 seconds. So 51 to 52 is fine. If you can get the cold plunge down 48 to 50 degrees, a little bit better, and it will take your breath away. But remember, 3 minutes minimum, 6 minutes maximum. So you can stay in for the full 6 minutes, and that's fine. It does not have to be painful. I don't know when cold plunging became like this contest of willpower to see how cold we could get the water. I really worry about people that get in 35, 37 degree water. I mean, but that cold plunge that I use will go down to 35, 37 degrees. I just don't put it down there. But I have seen all over Instagram people in 35 to 37 degree water, just a few degrees off of freezing, get in and even take a snorkel and go underwater and breathe underwater for 12 minutes. That is, in my opinion, very dangerous. We talked about it yesterday. Your brain is only this far inside the surface of your skull. It is not good to bake it, and it's not good to freeze it. Remember, we're trying to hormetically stress the body, 3 to 6 minutes, and get out. And we're going to do that every day, and you will not adapt to it every day. It's like if the person that was scaring you every day was in a different place every single day, you would still respond to that hormetic stress. But if they were in the exact same place every day, you would eventually adapt to that hormetic stress. It would no longer scare you. So again, there's a difference between becoming cold adaptive and cold shocking the body. Interestingly, some of the research that people put forward to poo-poo cold plunging and say that it lacks good scientific basis are studies that were done on cold water swimmers. Well, cold water swimmers are already cold adaptive, right? I mean, if you're used to swimming in very cold water and then you start a cold plunge routine, you're talking about a human that has already adapted to the cold environment that is not cold shocking themselves. Now, if they swam in warmer waters and started a cold plunge routine, well, then you would see the physiological adaptation. You would see the hormetic stress. So I think sometimes, we have to look at the study design that's giving us our information. And, there are people that will speak positively or negatively about just about anything. And that's why I'm trying to cut through all the noise and give you guys the sound research and the best benefit with the least amount of time. Is cold plunging for a menstruating woman during menstruation okay? Yes. Obviously, you want to protect yourself from having that, from menstruating into the water. But yes, during your menstrual cycle, it's perfectly fine to cold plunge. Again, I think this is a very good reminder that colder is not necessarily better, right? We're cold shock the body, 3 minutes minimum, 6 minutes maximum, and get out. But it's fine during any time of the menstrual cycle. I haven't seen any scientific evidence. There is some evidence against fasting during certain stages of the menstrual cycle, but I haven't seen any evidence against cold plunging during your cycle. So it doesn't matter if you're follicular, ovulation, or luteal. Adam Kandasamy, what's your opinion of just putting your hands in a large bowl of ice and water if people are not able to cold plunge? What's interesting is I saw Dave Asprey talking about this, just putting your face in a bowl of ice water. I personally haven't seen any valid science either way, so I can't say that doesn't work. It certainly would activate what's called the mammalian dive reflex, which is when your face is exposed to cold water. The neurons in your face actually communicate with your brain and shift you from a sympathetic state, fight or flight, into a parasympathetic state, which is rest and digest. The mammalian dive reflex is extraordinarily well documented in mammals. We are mammals, human beings are mammals. We have a spine. And so when dolphins or when whales dive deep into the ocean, not only does the pressure increase every 33 feet, the atmospheric pressure doubles, but the water temperature also drops. That cool water passing over the neurons in their face actually does slow their heart rate and calm them down. So I'm sure that there are some benefits to putting your face and or your hands in cold water. I don't think that you would get a massive peripheral vasoconstriction. I don't think that you would get a release of any substantive amount of cold shock proteins. And I don't think that would activate brown fat. So it might raise the dopamine and it might improve your mood. And it certainly would be exhilarating. But my preference would be, rather than just put your hands in your face in cold water, that you try a cold shower. If you're not in Greece where it's 80 degrees. Jenny, I'm guessing you can get the same results from just being in a cold environment, but what makes submerging in water more effective? Jenny, that's a great question. So water is 29 times more thermogenic than air. What does that mean? That means that water removes heat from the body at 29 times the rate of air. It is much easier to adapt to cold air than it is to adapt to cold water. So for example, if you walked outside and it was 50 degrees, you didn't have a shirt on, or you were in a pair of shorts, or if you're a woman, if you were in a bikini or something, you had a lot of skin exposed, you walked out much more easily to the loss of heat in 55-degree air or 50-degree air than it can in 50.
I'm going to give a couple minutes to let
I assume
people,
you're talking about really cold air. So yes, if you walked out in really cold air, you would get some of the same, some of the similar benefits.
Two things that I do every single day are breath work and cold plunging. I try to get natural light. I do try to touch the surface of the earth, but sometimes it's just not practical.
In fact, if you've been in the cold
plunging
plunge
and
you've ever stayed really still,
your drug of
you
choice.
actually know that your body actually, when you get goosebumps and those hairs rise, one of the things that those hairs are doing is kind of trapping water close to the skin. You do not have to buy the plunge pop-up. When you trap it close to the skin, it warms up.
Thousands of dollars on a cold plunge.
If you've ever sat in a cold plunge for like 30 seconds and then kind of moved your body around and you feel the cold water contact you again, that's because that water is 29 times more thermogenic than the same temperature air. You can die in 72-degree water. There are plenty of documented cases of people that have got hypothermia. You can just
dump those in your tub and fill it up with cool water, swirl it around and let all of the ice melt first. Don't get in there with all of the ice right at the top. It's okay if there's still some ice on the top, but you want it to swirl around so the temperature is kind of even,
and now you're getting way below zero and
cool the tub down, but by no means do you have to spend any money to participate in today's cold plunge challenge. In fact, I'm going to be giving away a bunch of cold plunge.
How are heat shock proteins different from cold shock proteins beyond the obvious implication in their name? So what's interesting is the cold shock proteins seem to have a lot more research that I'm able to find. There seems to be
we're gonna make these really exciting.
A longer list
you guys
of
for
cold shock proteins.
Breaking the mold
if you
doing
were to
really
Google,
difficult, you know,
total
one
number
of my favorite
of cold shock
that
proteins,
I say all the time,
total number of heat shock
aging
proteins,
is the aggressive
you'll see that there are more cold shock proteins.
And nothing is more true than that statement.
In general, they do relatively the same thing. They scour the body of free radical oxidation.
And so cold plunging allows you to get up in the morning, do something difficult, survive it, conquer it, have that dopamine rush, and then go out and start your day. And I think it's a real metaphor for life, because
after exercise,
in the human body, there is a response
to body temperature after exercise.
And
if you're going to do sauna and cold plunge, my preference is you do cold plunge
you put
prior to exercise
or your body under stress, and it strengthens in response. You know, not all stress is bad for the body. Some stresses are very good for the body. So this is what we call a hormetic
interestingly,
stress.
if you just look at basic human physiology,
and it's going to react by strengthening.
You know, when we go into the gym,
we do during
one of the
right? I mean,
the whole objective,
the whole reason we go to the gym
is to tear muscle,
right?
It's actually damage the muscle, so it repairs itself.
And what happens when you tear a muscle? Well, it goes back larger.
So let's say we did a big squat workout, right? And we tore a bunch of our quad muscle. What's the body going to do after we tear that quad back larger? It's going to increase the blood flow to that area. It's going to deliver more oxygen to those muscles. And then it's going to strip the creatine, the waste product, away from those muscles.
And that's what really makes our muscles much larger.
It's going to bring more amino acids to that site, so we can actually repair the myofibril tissue. So why would we want to shut that process down?
Cold shock the body.
So think about it. I mean, there used to be an old ad, and it's still a very pervasive.
You know, if you're on Instagram long enough, you're going to see guys getting sports plunges at 35 degrees.
After intense exercise, we should get into
10 or 12 minutes.
My son, when he was playing high school football,
I have seen anywhere,
you know, after every intense practice, they would put these guys in.
So let's just go through the basics of cold plunging really quick. And
I used to argue with the coach and say, look,
10 minutes,
we're
going to
switch
over to Ryan,
and I want him to. I don't want to strip the blood out of the areas that he's just damaged. I want more blood flow to the areas that have just damaged. So we want to sort of embrace the natural physiological process, not fight it.
Cold plunge,
right? So if the body's going to send more blood flow there, I'm not going to constrict it and strip the blood flow out. I'm going to enhance what the body's trying to do.
And change and put some dry clothes on.
The exception to that is injuries, right? Icing an injury after exercise is obviously a very good thing. So if you have lateral epicondylitis, if you have a medial knee issue, if you have a hip or rotator cuff or an elbow issue, then by all means ice that area of the body after exercise.
Or ice bath, eating, it is a hormetic stress. And when we hormetically stress the body, very often.
So 10 minutes until we get ready to take the plunge together, guys. If you're just joining us, remember, I am actually going to give away at the end of the challenge tomorrow. I'm going to give away a $7,000.
Remember that your arteries are actually smooth
Plunge
muscle.
XL. It's the one that I have with the integrated motor and the cover that you can put outside. You've got fully insulated. Which is it heats, it cools. You can run it from your app. You can turn the motor on and off. It's got lights in it. I mean, it is the granddaddy of all cold plunges. All you have to do is tag me in a post. I will repost these. Tag me in the post. I want the most creative cold plunge. I want me to show
in cold water.
Yeah, show me that your family is doing it. Husband, wives are doing it. Give me a really creative cold plunge. If you didn't, buy a pop-up plunge, but you're using a beer tub or a cattle trough or something else to do your cold plunge, I want to see it. I want to just get people excited about plunging. So give me the most creative cold plunge post. Tag me at Gary Brecka, and I'll select at the end of the day tomorrow, and I'll announce it, and I'll send you a $7,000
because
plunge XL.
It's so many protective mechanisms. We can tap these every day.
So Dawn says, I participated in a Wim Hof workshop, which means I've done that workshop too. Congratulations. And did my first cold plunge in March. It resulted in an epiphany. If I can wrap my brain around getting into cold water, then what can't I do? This was very emotional for me, and I noticed that a lot of participants yesterday were commenting on being very emotional. Can you speak to this? Yes.
In the body.
This is, first of all, Dawn, I just got goosebumps
most of us have some that we'd love to get rid of.
Because
so white fat is
sometimes when I talk about these things,
it's the fat that you can actually see. It's
the haters come out online and on
Instagram.
Very
visible.
There's no science
behind
different
that
type
of fat in the body called brown fat.
Either they say that you're fear mongering or they say that you're making
because brown fat is a human
I can tell you that I am a big believer in large data
and exchanges.
We have 150,000.
So when people say that cold plunging is not good for weight loss, or there's no evidence that cold plunging can
very
help you lose
often
body fat, that is absolutely
I put thousands of patients on a certain supplement, and I see their
fatty acid metabolism
vastly react the same way. I start talking about that big data. So I don't know that I can point to a specific randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled, published, peer-reviewed clinical trial.
How does your body warm back
to prove what I'm about to say? But you can't point to one of those on parachutes either.
It's probably,
and I sure as hell wouldn't jump out of an
80 degrees outside here in Miami.
But you see a
70-degree weather. How does your body go past 70 degrees,
report a dramatic
80 degrees,
improvement
and get all the way back to
90 and emotional state?
6
and why is that?
It's
because when we expose ourselves to cold water,
calories,
one of the things that the body does
generates
create a sense of alertness,
exchanging calories
for
heat. So
is it
raising your metabolism.
Dopamine is the main driver of behavior. So when dopamine rises, the body tries to stay in homeostasis.
If you saw my
what does
post
that mean?
The other day,
the body
we just
likes
passed
to be
our
in
150,000.
Right? So when our dopamine levels
we have 150,000
generally the levels of other endorphins.
I don't like to say that we.
What does this
mean?
Use our means that it improves the entire spectrum.
We do large scale experiments.
Sometimes people will get out of a
large scale
and they will experience
the ones
joy,
that do
elation,
plunging in the morning,
arousal,
consistently report better.
They'll experience
fat
these
percentages.
I call them
lower body
fat
percentages,
emotions,
and thousands of patients have told us
joy,
cold plunging
arousal
was the game changer. That
sometimes for a lot of people, it's been so long since they feel those emotions that they actually
body fat loss again.
So
first thing you get peripheral vasoconstriction.
I've seen this happen.
Then you activate brown fat. The body's thermostat. It starts to raise your temperature. There's a
we did cold plunges
creating heat, and that
hikes in the mountains.
Calories.
And I noticed that sometimes after getting out of cold plunges, people will get emotional.
The other thing that happens
in a good way.
This hormetic response is
like a happy type of crying. Again, I don't have a scientific study to back this up. I've seen it hundreds and hundreds of times.
Something called the mammalian
the science behind this would be that
and if you look at the mammalian rise in endorphins, all mammals, including human beings,
a lot of people, I feel like so many of us have accepted
when a whale or a dolphin,
which is the enemy of
dives in the ocean,
when our life is just okay,
actually go deeper,
when our relationships are colder,
okay, that cold water
when we're just
over their face,
all right,
causes their
body
to
stay in this sort of mood numb band sometimes for decades.
To a parasympathetic
break people out of that, right? I want people to feel
is a state of fight,
elation.
A parasympathetic state
is
a state of rest,
happiness. I want them to
when we're
feel
sleeping,
that rush
parasympathetic.
of endorphins.
When we're working,
sometimes
agitated,
have not felt
having
that
an argument
in so long.
Fearful
that cold
we're
plunge gives them a glimpse of what they were missing.
So believe it or not,
it causes an emotional reaction.
You get into cold plunge and you put your
I
head
have
just for
literally seen this
a few
so many
seconds
times
underwater.
It's
and
unbelievable.
That cold water
I've
rushes
seen
by
at
your
these big
face.
events that
you'll
they host here
this
in Miami.
mammalian dive reflex
plunges and
will
drying off
actually
and just
calm your
starting to weep with joy. And you ask them why you're crying, they go, I don't know.
or dolphin wanting to dive to great depths. As they're going deeper, they're obviously getting further from the surface.
The explanation behind.
So you want to use less oxygen, and you want the nervous system.
So we got time for one more question.
You want the heart rate
before we take a little break and we get back to the cold plunge. So Kelly B,
hold your breath.
Should I be shivering during the cold plunge? Yes or no? Sometimes people shiver, and that's a really great sign. That's a normal reaction. Sometimes they tell you to stay in the cold plunge until you start to shiver. I don't think that we use shivering as a measure of anything. Some people shiver, some actually don't. When I first started cold plunging, I used to get that little shiver when I would get in. Now, regardless of the temperature or the duration, I don't researching now. So again, shivering is actually a really good sign. Your body's reacting properly to the other one is water. It's also trying to raise your body temperature and
what's interesting about these two cold shock
trap more water. It actually, when you're shivering too, remember, you see the goosebumps are really prevalent.
Your body
raise all the hairs on the surface of your body to try to trap more heat.
And you broke through the ice. It's a normal
physiological response, but don't use it as the only measure of having a successful cold plunge.
Well, number one,
some people are like, I gotta stay in so long until I start to shiver, and then they stay in there for a prolonged period of time. Number four, that's unnecessary because they actually don't get to that point where they shiver. But if you do, they're one of those people that shiver every time you get in a cold plunge. That's a great sign. So don't be afraid of that. So all right, I think we got time for one more question, and then I'm going to break, and we're going to do the actual cold plunge. Can my pregnant wife cold plunge? If so, what would the protocol be? Would the protocol be any different? I apologize if you have already addressed this. No, I actually haven't addressed it. That's a great question. My preference would be that pregnant women take a cool shower.
To bring your blood sugar down.
The sad thing about pregnant women is that nobody wants to do testing on pregnant women.
Glucose,
right? So just about everything that you see, from toothpaste to laundry detergents to different food sources to every supplement under the sun says if you are pregnant or lactating, consult your physician before you take this
LDL cholesterol
supplement or use cardiovascular disease. The reason for that is there's just no data on pregnant women. Nobody wants to watch clinical study with pregnant women on anything that could potentially damage a growing fetus.
Many forms of cardiovascular
my preference would be that it's the cholesterol that you do cold shower and not cold plunge, because the rapid loss of heat, I'm not sure what that transmission would be.
It's like blaming the fireman for the fire
into the fetus.
So right, because on the safe old hypothesis was, well,
take a cool shower.
Every time there's a fire
during pregnancy, you'll still get a lot of the benefits.
And what are the firemen there to do? They're there to put out lowering the body. So every time there's endothelial damage, meaning damage.
All right, so we're now going to transition to the ice bath, my favorite part. So I'll be off camera for 1 minute. I'm going to make my way to the cold plunge, and then we're going to shoot out on my balcony. So if you're going to do the plunge with me, let's get into our plunges, and I'm going to cut the camera and I'll see you back in 1 minute.
Topic on our cold plunge challenge, but the things that cause damage to our endothelial lining. So it's not the firemen. The school of thought should not be if we had less firemen, we would have less fires. That's not true. So if we have less cholesterol, we don't have less cardiovascular disease. If we have less cholesterol, we have less capacity to repair the damage that causes cardiovascular disease. And so one of the interesting things about cold plunging, the reason why I'm telling you guys the story, is that one of the interesting things about cold plunging is these cold shock proteins that are released from your liver can actually help reduce that damage, lower the inflammatory response, and increase your insulin resistance. And then the final thing it does, think about what kind of mood or what kind of state you want to be in if you truly did fall through the ice. All right, if you actually cracked through the ice and you only had a few minutes to get out, well, you would want to be clear, cognizant, awake, and alert. You'd want a pupillary dilation. You'd want to be hyper aware of your surroundings. So what happens? You get a spike in dopamine. That's an endorphin rush. And this doesn't just last for 30 seconds, right? I mean, I saw a comparison between the amount of dopamine raised that you get from doing cocaine, and I don't suggest that you do cocaine instead of cold plunging. My preference is cold plunging, but that lasts about 9 to 20 minutes, and the rise in dopamine from cold plunging can last up to 6 hours. That's a fact.
All right, guys, we're back live. So if you're doing the plunge with me, we're getting ready. I'm going to add a little bit more ice. Somebody asked me how much ice I put in this. So we had about 3 bags. It's a little toasty out here. You know,
so now you're actually burning fat to try to turn your body temperature to
so I know a lot of you guys are in other parts of the world, so it might not be as hot.
I just think it's one of those things that every one of us has access to. If you've got a cold shower, if you've got a bathtub, you can cold plunge.
Woo!
I was excited because Plunge built this,
so we're going to go for 3 minutes today. If you want to go for 6
plunge,
minutes,
for us,
feel free to go for 6 minutes. I didn't feel like you guys wanted to stare at my face for 6 minutes in a cold plunge
to participate.
But
the exciting thing
I'm going to go for 3 minutes today.
You can do it just about anywhere. You know, it's really funny.
Maybe do a little bit of positive affirmations.
Every time I go to New York, I go to the peninsula in New York. And now when I check in, there's a little note in my system
a lot of benefit out of this. I deserve
a big
this.
Cooler full of ice, and they dump it into the hotel's tub there. And sometimes
I'm
there for 3 or 4 days, and the water stays cold the entire time.
Woo!
So I just want to congratulate you guys on taking this
4 breaths before I get
challenge. This is amazing.
I
want to welcome
Remember, we
Ryan.
Want to engage those intercostals, right? Those
Ryan, what's
muscles of respiration.
Awesome. Yeah, Ryan is the founder of Plunge, guys.
Right? A lot of us have
the reason for the
season
right now.
So we can mimic sprinting by engaging our auxiliary muscles of respiration. So we're going to do 4 obnoxiously deep breaths. And on the 4th breath, we're going to breathe all the way in.
But yeah, man,
we're going to hold,
you're excited to be
and
with
then
your
we're going to
community.
step into the plunge
we've been
and
looking forward
breathe
to this.
out until we sit all the way down to our neck.
Guys, if you
point,
really want to
dunk my head, get that mammalian dive reflex, let myself calm down in the plunge after that cold water hits my face. So here we go. 4 deep breaths. Ready?
Flew out to their facility. I was absolutely overwhelmed. I mean, they have more than 100,000 square feet of manufacturing out there for these different plunges. So take it away, man. What are some of the benefits of cold plunging? I would love it if we could actually see your place.
As Ron Burgundy would say, that is an instant state of euphoria.
I'm on my iPhone here, yes. Well,
so all the way down to my neck.
Tour the factory, see them all being built and everything. Yeah, man. I mean, you summed it up.
You can leave your hands out.
Sometimes
I'll put my hands in. A lot of people have a hard time with fingers and toes. So you can just leave your hands out on the edge of the cold plunge. Or you can put them in. You're still getting the benefits.
I'm a scientist, and I play them on a podcast a lot.
Keep your chin down, right down on the water.
Everyone being here, your first time, whether you've done hundreds of these.
You see my feet in there?
It's just the beautiful part is no matter where you're at, it works.
So keep your chin in all the way up to your neck, and then here's some of the techniques that I like to use.
60 seconds,
hey, can you guys stop drilling over there?
You're going to see the benefits.
I'm running a lot of cold plunge challenge.
You know, that's.
And they don't care.
That's why we do this.
So I use 2 breathwork techniques. One is called box breathing, which is a 4-second inhale.
So I'm really excited.
Followed by a 4-second hold. Followed by a 4-second exhale.
And most of them are by myself, and they're awesome. But there's nothing better than when you're doing it with a bunch of different people.
So it looks like this.
And you're seeing the smile, seeing the struggle that everyone's kind of going through in that first 30 seconds. And it's a good note for everyone when you get in today. Like, you're going to go first 30 to 45 seconds are going to be challenging. And that's what you want. You want that signal of your breath kind of being taken away, kind of lose your breath for a second. That's a great,
and you just keep tracing.
It's a good signal to the body.
Circle.
You just
We're
focus in on that
over
breath.
a minute and a half. We got a minute
seconds,
and 18
a little different for everyone. You'll
go,
start
guys.
to feel yourself kind of
the second one, this is what Ryan from Plunge
the signal
uses.
That you really want. Everyone always
just
asks,
does
how long
a deep inhale.
What's
and
a good
exhales
time for
out
plunging?
at twice the length through an imaginary straw.
Minutes and more on the signals to the body. And like I said, you get in, you want to lose your breath.
Exhale through a straw.
Kind of get that shock like Gary was talking about. And then there's a point where you kind of feel your whole system regulate, and you'll feel your breath elongate a little bit more. And I always say you want to be able to choose to get out of the cold water as
by
opposed
now
to
you
the
should
water
be
forcing
fully
you out.
used to the cold water,
and you'll hit
guys.
these different thresholds
You are
throughout the
way
time while
beyond
you're
the hardest
so really
part.
listen into the
Most
body.
of you should feel that.
You know, and that might be a minute.
Overwhelming urge to get
seconds,
out.
but feel yourself
got about 35 seconds.
Regulated. I'm
going to do
a little bit more
take
control
my
of being,
blue blockers off and do a little mammalian
and I think
dive
plunge is one of the most. It's the thing that I found the most. We cannot create artificial environments that stress us out. You know, we go through life every single day, and when someone cuts us off in the road, there's a stressful moment. But we couldn't have made that up. We can't make someone walk into a room and
say,
"It
is refreshing."
You can't make
all right,
that
5
up.
seconds.
Is the only
4,
thing that you can actually intentionally
3,
step into
2,
and go, okay,
1,
this is going to really stress me out.
And we're done.
But I'm going
Congratulations, you guys.
So I think that
is amazing.
Real intention.
We just got
is knowing
2,000 people or so through there.
We're gonna do something hard. We're gonna do it together.
Or maybe the second cold plunge.
Capable of doing this.
That was amazing.
The body is resilient.
You should
the body
feel
can adapt to this.
Incredible. And as the day goes on, this feeling will not go away for hours and hours and hours. I mean, it's basically free. If you just did it in a cold shower or your tub with some ice or one of these $120 plunges, you just got a mood improvement, elevated your emotional state.
3 minutes in cold water in the morning.
The sun hit my body right now. It's just so good, guys.
And then you get a little nasty,
every single day.
gram on Instagram, or your boss kind of upsets you, or your spouse says something off color, your kids are particularly
my hands are not.
It just
fingers
seems like
toes
nothing.
are not
You're
even
like,
that cold.
this is nothing, man. I've already
that was
been
a successful
in 50-degree water for 3 minutes, and I feel
you can
great.
sign up to be a VIP. We're going to take a 15-minute break, and then I'm going
to
spend an hour with my VIPs just directly answering more questions, trying to have a one-on-one reaction with you. But if you want a shot at winning the XL Cold Plunge, the $7,000 Big Mama Cold Plunge, I'll send it right to your front door. Do the most creative cold plunge post. Tag me. I'm going to repost these. I want to get as many people into cold plunging as possible. So the most creative post is going to win. Tomorrow announce the winner, and I will send that Cold Plunge XL right to your front door.
I did
guys, thank you so much for participating today. Please join the VIP group.
Hey, this
ultimatehuman.com and just sign up to be a VIP. I promise you I'll give you more value than what you're spending every month to be a part of my membership group. Other than that, I will see you guys tomorrow. 2 big special guests. I'm actually going to have 2 cold plunges tomorrow, and I've got 2 special guests joining us, so you definitely want to participate tomorrow. Meet the special guest. You can ask the questions. I just say that it was meant.
Yeah.
So you ask questions directly.
You know what I want to do?
But I will see you guys tomorrow.
Hey, Dylan. Dylan Parlon, if you're listening, I'm sending you a pop-up plunge, unless you already have one. So if you'll just text your, we got your first and last name, but text us your address. We're going to get you out a plunge pop-up for free. I love that you're doing that for your morning routine. I want to reward you guys for that. I'm going to be giving away a bunch of swag gear and stuff today too, but Dylan just got our first free pop-up plunge. So Ryan, are you in the room that has the 2 plunges? Yeah. Oh, there it is. This is my favorite room. He's got a sauna.
Got our saunas, and we got the plunges here. So got our plunges. So our team's always getting in the cold water, whether on breaks, after work, before work.
He's not lying, dude. I've been to their headquarters, and they rotate through there, and they actually get in a plunge. I mean, what an awesome reward for your employees. Everybody gets along after they get out of the cold plunge.
Fun fact: we do all of our final interviews in the sauna and cold plunge.
You really? That's great. I feel like there's an HR violation in there somewhere.
But it's worked out so far. And then we have a program for all of our team that cold plunges. They get bonuses and whatnot. So it's just something. It's a win-win. We get everyone plunging. Everyone's in a better mood. Everyone's healthier. And so yeah, I'm here in our facility. We have a couple of our different. These are all in units. We have a bunch of different ones, whether from the pop-up all the way up to these units here. But yeah, this is where I'm going to be plunging today. Taking the plunge with all you guys. But we walk on out here. Right out here is we go out. We have our big factory out here and all the different.
Yeah, look at this place, guys. That is a serious operation.
We just go. It's just a bowl. It's cold plunge factory.
Wow.
We have our chillers here for different product types. We do all the testing here, all the production, all the assembly. So if you're ever out in the West Coast here in Sacramento, California, hit us up. Come in, get a cold plunge with us. Come see where they're built. Come see where we ship them out, test them, and everything. So
I've been there, and show them the QC area, the quality control area, because these plunges are manufactured, and then they once they're done, they go to this special area, and there's a series of quality controls. They fill them with water, they circulate it, and test the motors. Yeah, let's see.
Yes, we have all of our different water beds. So every unit we recycle all the water here. all the water gets put through, and then it's almost like, you know, you guys know the movie The Matrix? It almost looks like that. We just have dozens and dozens of units here all being tested. So they get tested, obviously check for any leaks, make sure they're cooling at the right speed. All the team, here's a checklist right here. So the team gets it and they go through. But yeah, it's a really fun spot. It's kind of the final spot before they get approved and then sent out to shipping. But yeah, this team takes a lot of pride into the units that come through here and you know, end up in people's homes across the world.
Yeah. And I think it's worth pointing out, guys, I mean, Ryan, this is a labor of love for Ryan and his partner. I mean, they actually both started in the float tank business. They had float tank spas, and then COVID hit, and they sort of reimagined things, and they started this small little company called Plunge, and they've innovated themselves over and over again. I mean, the thing that was really especially impactful for me was the amount of response they take to customer feedback. So customers didn't like, you know, the position of the motor. They didn't like the sound the motor would make. They didn't like the depth of the plunge. They didn't like the width of the plunge. They didn't like the angle of the tub. And they took all of this customer feedback and they just kept innovating this tub. I mean, the one that I get in is called the Plunge XL. By no means am I telling you guys you have to have one of these fancy plunges, but the one I have is the Plunge XL. This thing is whisper quiet. I change the water every 4 or 5 months. It stays crystal clear. It's got a beautiful light in it. You can recline in the back. But when I went to the factory, I was just awestruck by the amount of pride and passion that goes into the work that they do. I don't just think it's the best plunge. I think it's the most reliable plunge. I think it has the quietest motor. I think it's the best bang for the buck, you know, dollar wise. So you can actually see the size of that operation is unbelievable. When was your first cold plunge, Ryan?
My first cold plunge was like my first intentional cold plunge was back around 2015.
Intentional cold plunge? You did some unintentionally?
Water, you know, gotten in a river and felt the benefits, but like actually like, okay, I'm going to do this cold plunge thing that this crazy guy named Wim Hof is telling the world about. You know, he changed my life. He introduced me to, you know, the power of cold water. And right around 2015, I did it and it was, you know, life changing. Yeah, this company didn't start from, you know, we were practitioners well before this thing ever came about. And, you know, it was Mike and I, we started it in a garage and really grateful to, you know, I never would have thought I'd be here with a group like you guys, you know, doing a cold plunge challenge with thousands of people. But it's, I pinch myself. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. You know, what's really cool is, you know, here in Miami, there's, you know, these guys are a part of a revolution of sort of resetting the Miami day party. And, you know, they have these events where, you know, people gather and they cold plunge and they have coffee and they get together with a DJ. And I've been to a couple of these and there are 400 plus people there. And what was really cool to me was that you walk into this setting and they're in great hotels, they're on rooftops, they're in really cool pop-up places around the city. I'm in downtown Miami. And what's really cool is you have this beautiful crowd, you know, relatively young crowd. And instead of being gathered around, you know, partying and alcohol, they're gathered around cold plunging and coffee and exchanging ideas and networking. And it's a really cool environment. And if you walked into this party, you would think it was any other Miami Beach day party. There's a DJ. The only thing that's absent is drugs and alcohol and the nighttime. It's, you know, they have them in the mornings. And it's so cool to see that there's this undercurrent of biooptimization and longevity and anti-aging and optimal health. It's sort of becoming the in thing. You know, maybe people are drinking a lot less. They're being a lot more health conscious. And it was really cool to see so many people in their 20s and early 30s, all getting together in a really safe environment and bathing suits and getting into cold plunges and having coffee and then networking together. And it was a cool icebreaker, because instead of going to a networking event where everybody's kind of dressed up and wearing their fancy watches and their nice shoes, and the women are all carrying great purses, it's hard to tell the socioeconomic difference between people when they're in board shorts and bikinis. And so everybody's kind of on the same plane, and the energy there was amazing. The exchange of ideas was amazing. I met so many young entrepreneurs that were doing super cool things in the Bitcoin space, and the tech space, and in the marketing space, and in the social media space. And I just think that this pandemic in a lot of ways did us a big favor. It woke us up to the importance of our own state of health, that we actually have to become citizen scientists ourselves. And modern medicine is not going to do it for us. We've got to take optimal health into our own hands. And so one of the ways that we do that is we learn interesting ways to hormetically stress the body and strengthen it. So I promise you, the next time you show up at the office at 9 o'clock in the morning, if you were in a cold plunge at 7 a.m. that morning, it's going to be your highest performing day of your career. And so it's just really cool to see people embracing these other ways of getting that stimulus, of being clean and clear and cognizant and awake. If you haven't, gotten out of a cold plunge yet and felt that dopamine, that sustained dopamine rise, you're in for a real treat. I'm really, really excited to do this. These guys also, can you just walk us in and show us the saunas? Yeah, this is wild too, because the room that he's in, there's another room just as big where they're actually making saunas. And sometimes I talk about contrast therapy. Those of you that participated in my sleep challenge, one of the biggest bumps in sleep scores that we had was doing some contrast therapy, sauna, cold plunge, or really, really warm shower followed by a really, really cold shower and then getting in. Look at this. So tell us what's going on here, Ryan.
It's pretty noisy in here with all the guns going off and all the pressure tanks and everything. But here we have a QC approved sauna ready to go out right here. It's our XL. So we build it all from clear cedar from the ground up. We do the full manufacturing here in Sacramento, California. And this has been this was another product that we launched just out of kind of because you guys, the customer, a lot of our customers had the cold plunge and they were like, would you guys ever build a sauna? And so we took it on, spent about 2 years designing it. And this is the final state here. So have all the saunas going out. We have 2 different types. We'll have a 3rd type launching later this year.
Do you have one that's fully assembled?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys can hear me. It's
I can hear you. Do you have one that's fully assembled?
We have actually this morning they're all crated up.
It's really cool. It's just got a pitched roof, and it's narrow at the base and wider at the back. It's a really cool one.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jacqueline Nicholson says, I've been doing the grounding, morning sun, and a cold plunge 2 to 3 times per day since April. I'm 57 and I feel better than I have most of my adult life. I'm a leukemia survivor from 2017. That is amazing. Jacqueline, I am going to send you some swag gear, some Ultimate Human swag. So if you just connect with my team in the chat, I'm going to send you some female workout gear. I'm going to send you an Ultimate Human trucker. And if we have her size, I'll even send you some of my Ultimate Human, the hottest selling item on Amazon, sold out around the world, collector series, limited edition, Ultimate Human flip-flop. So you're getting a whole swag pack, Jacqueline. Thank you for sharing that with us. Ryan, it's so awesome, man. So many people are like coming in and telling me how cold plunging has changed their life. Jenny Martinez is asking, please talk about how to resist that initial urge to jump out. I can't seem to overcome it. You want to take that one, Ryan?
Yeah. So I would encourage, that's totally normal. First, that's the response we want. So it starts with the mindset, like, okay. And also, if it is too cold and you can't stay in, raise the temperature up a bit. A lot of it's 60 degrees below and you're first starting out, just go there. Get an easy thermometer, fill it up with a little warm water, more warm water if you need to. I would just say if you cannot stay in and get through that first, I would say really focus 10 breaths, raise the temperature up a bit. And when you're doing it, what I really like to focus on is my exhale being twice as long as my inhale.
Great point. Yeah, and exhale through a straw.
My system up.
Yeah, exhale through a straw. One of the things that I do is I'll show you guys today when we actually do the actual cold plunge itself. When Ryan and I and the rest of you guys get in a cold plunge here in a few minutes, is I actually, right before I step in, I do 4 obnoxiously deep breaths. On the 4th breath, I breathe in as much as I can, and I step into the cold plunge, and I go, and I exhale, and I sit all the way down to my neck. And what I find is by focusing on my breath, I'm not as focused on that overwhelming shock from the water. So I'll breathe out, an inhale 3 times obnoxiously. Then on the 4th inhale, I step into the cold plunge and I sit all the way down to my neck. But Ryan brings up a really good point. Again, I haven't seen any research that colder is better or longer is better. Technically, a cold plunge is anything below 58 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can start at 58 or 60 degrees Fahrenheit, work your way down to between 50 and 55 degrees and stay there. That's fine. Remember, we're not trying to become cold adaptive. We are trying to cold shock the body. We don't want to become an Eskimo, right? We don't want the body to begin to start to adapt to cold. That's why most cold plunge, I recommend 3 minutes minimum, 6 minutes maximum, right? 3 to 5 minutes is perfect, 6 minutes maximum, and get out. You've gotten all the benefits. You've released all the dopamine. You've spiked all the endorphins. You've had a maximum vasoconstriction. You've had the maximum activation of brown fat. The cold shock proteins have been released from your liver. So by staying in there longer and really starting to shiver and potentially lower your core body temperature, there's not a lot of benefits to that. Shock your body, get all 5 of those benefits, and then get out. And you can slowly work your way down to lower temperatures. Don't, look at some of these folks on Instagram that are getting in 35, 37 degree water and going underwater with a snorkel. I actually think that that's quite dangerous. Remember, I talk about this all the time. Your brain is only this far inside the surface of your skull. It is not good to freeze it. It is not good to bake it. So not too cold for too long. But I think that focusing on your breath is a great thing. And then try to at least get to 30 seconds. And then your next time, try to get to a minute. And then I think once you make it to a minute, you're there.
Yeah, the big thing, I liken cold plunging to a workout routine. So, we're building up resiliency in our immune system, strengthening our nervous system. Those are 2 areas we're working on. But we also have to look at it when we're starting this journey, those might not be strong. So it's similar to if you haven't worked out in 5 years' time, I'm not going to go put you through a CrossFit workout. And in fact, that would probably be a negative to your body and could hurt you. So you want to treat the cold water that way too. It's like your first workout back. It's like, hey, let's just sweat. Let's get a little resistance training going. Let's get some steps in. That's the starting point, and it's the long game. We don't end a workout and be like, all right, I'm done working out forever. Cold plunging is very similar to other systems within our body. This is a long game we're playing. And when we start out, just do something that's attainable, that's achievable, that stresses you out a little. We do want that stress response, but there is a threshold that's too far. So we really
Woo! I still have a chill. I don't know about you guys. I actually went and got a coffee. So let's let everybody get in here. Congratulations, you guys. Day 2 of the 3 days of cold plunges. And like, I've been fired up about some challenges before, but I think I'm the most fired up about this challenge. I saw whole families getting in cold plunges, moms, dads, kids. You know, we have people in their 70s getting in the plunge. This is just amazing. I got some of the most incredible messages from you guys about how you got that hell yeah, I won the lottery feeling. I'm still buzzing from it right now. I can definitely feel the dopamine. I just feel clear, cognizant, awake. I just feel very alert. I did some sprints back and forth on my balcony. I'm going to contact the Olympic Committee and make cold plunging a part of the Olympics. I don't know how we would judge that, but I'm going to go for it. So guys, let's fire up some questions, man. Congratulations on, you know, if this was your first cold plunge yesterday or today, congratulations. You know, just another tool in the arsenal. You know, every month, I'm just coming up with new ways to tap into this phenomenal vessel that we have called the human body, and just some of the things that we can do to access the resources that we might otherwise not access and not be a part of that community where aging is the aggressive pursuit of comfort. So we definitely did not pursue comfort today. All right, man, let's fire it up. Dylan?
Hey, Gary.
Oh, you won the cold plunge yesterday? He won.
Yeah, yesterday.
Oh, Dylan won the pop-up yesterday. So it hasn't gotten to you yet, but it's on its way, brother.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait. Do you hear me okay?
I can hear you now. I had my volume down.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I can't wait for the tub. I seem to be a little bit too comfortable for what I think I should be doing. I did just in the bathtub yesterday and then the shower today, which the shower felt a little bit colder, but I think it could be colder. So that tub's going to be perfect.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah. Okay, so going off of basically one of the questions yesterday, as far as the BPC 157 goes, being in Canada, it's been hard to find. I finally did find a source for it. Had a few issues when I first started taking it, but I'm also type 1 diabetic and celiac, so it's hard to know whether that was affecting what I thought might have been the BPC. So one question for you on that. Would you recommend, should that be taken aside from other supplements, or should it be taken a certain time of the day or with food, anything like that?
So the really interesting thing about BPC 157 is because it's a gastric peptide, gastric pentadecapeptide, you can actually take it with or without food. Doesn't change the pH of the stomach, so it should not make you nauseous. It actually is very good for celiac. You know, true allergy to gluten, but it's actually an inflammatory bowel disease. You also might want to consider, if you have a pen or a pencil, or you can type this into your computer, something called Toxi Prevent, TOXI Prevent. You actually order this out of Europe. It very likely is available in Canada. It is not a US supplement. For Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, diverticulitis, all of these conditions of inflammatory conditions of the bowel. I personally have never seen anything like this supplement, Toxi Prevent. There's a couple of different versions. This one is for the lower GI, so it's the red box. So look for that online, see if you can get that there. And it basically, what it does is it absorbs histamines in the gut. Well, you know, all these inflammatory conditions of the bowel, and I know your question was about BPC, so I apologize for diverting, but all these conditions of the bowel have one common thing in common. They're all inflammatory conditions, and the histamines that are made in the gut, we actually make a lot of the inflammatory factors in our gut. That's why when we get queasy, or we eat something that doesn't agree with us, or we see something that causes us to have a vasovagal response, you know, we start to feel that first in our gut. Right? Bacterial infections, viral infections, parasitic infections, even though they're blood-borne infections, very often we feel it in the gut. That's because histamines are made in the gut. So if we can actually absorb them into the central part of the colon and keep them from exiting the colon, then we have less symptomology, right? Less cramping, less peristaltic activity, less bloating, less gas, less of that muscular type of cramping. So check that supplement out too.
Okay, that's awesome. Right. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Got it, brother. Phew, my fingers are still cold. Hi there. Is it Teresa?
Hi. Yes.
Hi, Teresa.
Hi. Wonderful. Thank you. On board, all of it. So, Ultimate Human.
Yes.
What is your opinion, your thoughts, the white papers about blood flow restriction bands?
Yes.
Working out.
So I'm actually a big fan of blood flow restriction training. You know, you can actually do less and achieve more. So this is based around the concept of purposeful lactic acid buildup. So when our bodies are exercising, it's technically not the lactic acid that makes your muscles burn. It's technically hydrogen ions that make your muscles burn. But regardless, the concept is when we restrict blood flow, we reduce the amount of oxygen going to the muscle. When that happens, our body switches from using oxygen in the mitochondria to using carbon dioxide in the mitochondria. When that happens, we raise the lactate threshold. We actually, we increase the lactate threshold. And when that happens, we stimulate something called angiogenesis. So new blood vessels grow, capillaries grow in response to a number of things. One of the really beneficial things of exercise is you actually cause new capillaries to grow. It's called angiogenesis. And one of the things that stimulates these capillaries to branch. So imagine, a system of roots that are just winding their way through your muscles, right? These are your capillaries. When you build up lactate in the muscle, it irritates the distal tip of these capillaries and they sprout, right? So one of the things that actually causes this new blood vessel growth is an increase in lactate. And so when you use bands and you restrict the blood flow, I actually did a podcast. Who was it that I did the podcast with that I did the blood flow restriction with? You were there, you shot it. We got to, no, it was, I did a podcast with, I can't think of it right, of his name right now. I'm having a brain fart, but we did blood flow restriction. And I was actually really impressed at the amount of muscle hypertrophy that I got. I put these bands on, I did 10-pound weights for high reps and my arms turned blue and I really felt it. So I'm a big fan of blood flow restriction.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You got it. Hi there.
Hi, Gary.
How are you?
I am wonderful. Having
what
trouble.
What part of the world are you in?
Excuse me. So, my question is this: when I was a little girl, I got frostbitten.
You got what?
Frostbitten.
Okay.
And do you have any tips on how to do the cold plunge? So I've been taking cool showers. I've been trying to work myself up.
Yes.
But anything that hits any part of my body, I just shiver and run.
Yes. So again, start at a higher temperature. You can start at 58 to 60 degrees and work your way down to 55 degrees. Remember, frostbite, you actually have to truly get frostbite, you've got to be below freezing, right? You actually have to freeze the tissue. You're actually forming water crystals in the tissue, ice crystals in the tissue, and that causes tissue necrosis. It can permanently damage that tissue. So we're not flirting with those kinds of temperatures. When we're doing cold plunging, one of the reasons why I don't like it when people do them very, very, very cold, I actually don't want your tissue to crystallize. I just want it to chill. So when you're in the 48 to 55 degree range, very, very hard to get frostbite. Now, lots of people have something called Raynaud syndrome where they're already prone to poor circulation. For those people, I suggest they get those. They're like the $6 zip up booties you can get off of Amazon. They're actually dive booties. And you zip them up around your ankles and it'll protect your ankles and your feet. Your feet and your ankles won't even get wet. And then you can leave your hands out. So that's one way to avoid that. But you don't really need to worry about that with cold showers and cold plunging, especially if you keep the temperatures in the range I just described, because we're not actually forming a crystalline tissue, a crystalline structure in our tissues, right? Once the tissue actually freezes, right? It gets below the temperature of freezing, you can permanently damage that cell, right? And so that area of the body dies. If you actually ever seen somebody, which you've experienced frostbite, sometimes their tips of their fingers turn black. And that's actually tissue necrosis. So we don't want to flirt with anything down around those temperatures. That's why I don't like temperatures below 40 degrees. I really don't encourage people to do the ultra cold plunging or the ultra long plunging. For that reason.
it was about minus 30 degrees out in
definitely form ice crystals at minus 30 degrees, right? I mean, those are dangerously low temperatures. You know, think about the amount of oxygen in your bloodstream, the amount of hydrogen in your bloodstream, and you know, your body can actually take the gases in the blood and form a water crystal, right? You can take 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen and form a water molecule. Once you have a water molecule, if that's below freezing, it turns into a crystal. Once it crystallizes, it can permanently damage the tissue. So again, that's why we don't flirt with temperatures like that. You know, in cryotherapy, you have that chance. That's why if you go to cryotherapy places, they always cover the hands, the head, the ears, and the feet, you know, before you get into a cryotherapy chamber, just to avoid that specific thing, you know, forming crystalline water structure.
Great. And really quickly, do you have a recommendation for a good water thermometer?
A good water thermometer? That's a great question. No, I don't. I actually have one that looks like a rubber turtle. I got off of Amazon. So it's like a little turtle floating on the water with the thermometer on it. But
something for the shower.
I'm not familiar with any of those manufacturers. If anybody does, if you got a good recommendation for a water thermometer, if you could just pop it in the chat for her so she could read it. I like my turtle just because it's bigger. When I pick it up, I twist it. It's easy to see. I also have my real preference is the guns. They actually have guns you can get off of Amazon, and it uses a light beam, and you just point it at the water, click the trigger, and it will tell you exactly what the temperature is. You can actually use it. You can actually click it on your forehead and use it for temperature too. They proliferated during the shower.
Would that work?
You know, we don't really use the oral thermometers much anymore. Those are kind of 1998 technology, but these gun thermometers are very, very accurate. And some of them even have a switch that you can use to measure moisture. So you could actually measure moisture in your walls too, and they're not very expensive.
I gotcha. But since I'm doing a shower, would that work on that?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great one. Hey, man. John?
Hey, Gary. How's it going?
I'm doing great, John. How are you?
Excellent. Been following you for quite a while now, and just want to say you've changed my life quite a bit. So I appreciate it.
Really? Thank you. What changed your life the most?
Just some of the recommendations you provide on like intermittent fasting, 3-day fast. I did that challenge. That was first time I've ever went that long without eating.
Yeah, that's tough.
Man, it was a lot. Well, I'd been doing intermittent fasting for a while, so it was actually easier than I thought it was going to be, to be honest. But yeah, it definitely I felt the difference, and I felt the improvements and everything. So
I'm really happy to hear that, man. That's what these challenges are all about, right?
Yeah,
they're really designed to reinforce our belief in ourselves, right? Our belief in what God gave us and the fact that we can heal. You know, interestingly, we turn over the majority of our cellular structures about every 84 days, about 300 billion cells a day. But after a single year, every single cell in your body, including every strand of hair in your body, even every cell in your bones, is completely regenerated. This is why I don't believe that, you know, we can't heal ourselves, that we can't recover from chronic disease, that we can't recover from chronic conditions, autoimmune conditions. If I'm going to replace every single cell in my body in 84 days, the majority of the cells in my body in 84 days, and every single cell in my body in a year, why is it that I can't replace those with healthy cells that are fully functional? Well, we can. I know that wasn't your question, so I diverted. What do you got?
Sounds amazing. So I'm a believer. So I do have a question. A friend of mine, she is you mentioned yesterday the magnesium breakthrough protocol with the morning also.
Yes.
She's already taking some stuff. AG1 has some magnesium in it. I think she's taken one other thing. But my question was, is that I know you can take too much magnesium. I'm just not sure the levels. Is that something that she needs to quit taking to move to the magnesium breakthrough protocol?
No, she takes the EG1 in the morning, and then she takes the magnesium breakthrough at night. She should be okay. Magnesium's one of those that's you can get to a toxicity level. It's really hard. It's like B12, it's water soluble. It's very hard to reach a toxic dose. If she's doing any kind of blood work, it's part of what's called a comprehensive metabolic panel, which is on almost every set of blood work. Most blood work starts with a CBC, and then the second section is called a CMP, comprehensive metabolic panel, and there's a magnesium level in there. They like to look at magnesium, potassium, sodium, chloride as ways of making sure that you have enough electrolytes to have healthy cardiac function. So I'd be very surprised if she reached a toxicity level just by adding magnesium breakthrough. And she should notice the effects pretty quickly. Most people notice them in 24 to 48 hours. It's almost an instant response to adding magnesium. And the interesting thing about this magnesium, just to be hyper specific, is it's 7 different forms of magnesium. So while most people, when they reach a toxicity level with magnesium or vitamin B12, it's because they're taking the exact same form, like magnesium glycinate or magnesium citrate or magnesium threonate. And they take the same form of magnesium in very high dose. So remember, this is 7 different forms of magnesium. So you'd have a really hard time reaching a toxicity threshold just by adding the magnesium breakthrough.
Copy that. So there's 2 different versions that you recommended yesterday, right? One was the morning, I believe.
One was the magnesium breakthrough by BioOptimizers. The other one was the sleep breakthrough by BioOptimizers. People that have very active minds at night, or they have hard time staying asleep, or hard time falling asleep. Now, I'm not talking about getting up repeatedly to urinate. That'll wake anybody up. But just when your mind just spontaneously kind of wakes you up at night, and then you lay there awake, ruminating on some kind of thought, ruminating over the day, or ruminating over your schedule, or ruminating that you have a flight the next morning. Lots of people struggle with that. Generally, the magnesium breakthrough will address that.
Okay, so they'll take both of them at night then?
Yes, take both of them at night. 2 scoops of the sleep breakthrough and 1 scoop of the magnesium breakthrough. It's right on the back of the bottle too. The dosing instructions are on the back.
Perfect. Thank you, Gary. Right. I appreciate it.
Awesome, my friend. Thank you for the kind words. Hey guys. Ryan.
Hey, Gary.
How you doing, Ryan?
Colin. Hey, good. Here in Halong Bay in Vietnam for a buddy's wedding. So still wanted to try to
get the distance award.
Yeah, maybe. Hey, so I have the half break, the yellow for the COMT. What was your thoughts on the moringa powder stuff and or lion's mane?
Moringa and lion's mane are great. And one thing you want to avoid with the COMT break is you actually want to avoid quercetin. You want to actually avoid green tea and quercetin, and you want to avoid elderberry. Right? I mean, these are good in other instances. They are not good for people that have COMT. Elderberry and quercetin are COMT inhibitors. So quercetin is found in high doses in green tea. Lots of people supplement with quercetin or elderberry. They're great antioxidants, but I prefer you use something else like a vitamin C as an antioxidant, or fulvic minerals, or just what you're talking about, lion's mane. Those are perfectly fine for people with COMT gene mutations.
So the moringa doesn't have too much of the quercetin in it?
You can look on the back of the moringa and it will give you usually it will give you the quercetin level. If it actually lists quercetin, then I wouldn't take it. Lion's mane for sure is fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Hey, man. Joe.
All right. What's up, Gary?
What's up, Joe?
Got a question about cold plunging. Is it, I take a lot of caffeine throughout the day, unfortunately. I'm trying to cut that back. If we cold plunge multiple times a day, say once in the morning, then it's go, and then once before work, like midday, Could we desensitize to it as far as the endorphins and the dopamine, or is that totally fine?
Here's the good news. No, you actually don't desensitize to it. This is a great question, by the way. This is precisely why I don't want us to be cold adaptive. I want us to cold shock the body. This is why I prefer shorter periods with temperatures that are not too cold, because you do not adapt to it. The body receives, just like we don't really, we somewhat adapt to exercise, but if we kind of shift the type of exercise, we can still create muscle hypertrophy. The same thing happens with cold plunging. 4 hours seems to be the magic window apart from where you can actually receive a second dopamine spike. So as long as you're 4 hours or longer apart, you can do short cold plunges. I've actually, ironically, I've used that. I had a really heavy travel schedule at the beginning of the part of the year. And sometimes I would get back and I would have a heavy client schedule where I would do private Zooms with clients. And I did just what you're doing. I actually did cold plunging midday to just kind of shock myself back awake and just get refocused and alert, and it worked very well. So the science is clear, that if you don't become cold adaptive, you never actually adapt to that hormetic stress response. People that will tell you, I mean, there was somebody that just said they did their 255th cold plunge. I bet they would tell you that their 255th cold plunge was just like the first cold plunge that they ever did. Right? Similar kind of reaction, similar kind of stimulus, similar kind of sensation of elation and joy, similar desire to get the heck out when they got in there. So as long as you're not doing prolonged periods of time, you're still going to get the benefit.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You got it, my friend. Great question. Jeffrey.
How you doing, Gary?
I'm doing great, Jeff. How are you?
Doing well. I don't have the ice plunge yet, but I've been doing cold showers.
Okay.
I've been doing that consistently for months now, and it's great. But definitely want to transition to the full plunge sometime. But I'm enjoying listening to all the information. Just had a quick question.
Sure.
So, I bought the Whoop band from our last challenge, and one metric that I noticed is a lot lower than many other individuals. And I heard it's individualized, is like heart rate variability.
Yes.
And I just wanted to get your opinion on thoughts on having a very low number kind of consistently. It does move up and moves up and down, but basically any recommended ways for me to kind of, if this is showing your level of fitness or whatever, ways to enhance and improve that over time. Is cold plunging or cold showers, is that something that can help with that? Just wanted to get your thoughts around heart rate variability.
Yeah, so heart rate variability is very individualized. So when you say low, are you talking about teens? Are you talking about 20s, 30s? What are you saying is low?
Yeah, probably more so in the mid-teens.
Okay, so in the mid-teens, so same place that my daughter is. So what you want to do with the Whoop band is you'll develop a baseline for your own heart rate variability, and then what it will start to do is it will start to report results to you based on your baseline and say, hey, your heart rate variability was 25% above normal last night or 15% below normal last night. If you've been wearing the Whoop for a while, you're kind of starting to see this data come in. Heart rate variability will link to two other factors you can keep an eye on. One is recovery and one is strain, right? One is strain is like your readiness to be challenged. On days where your strain is very low, then you can actually engage in more intense physical exercise. When strain is very high, you want to kind of give your body a little bit of a break. Recovery is how much you were able to recover from your last strain, right? So when you're looking at the Whoop, it will actually develop a baseline for you. Start to go off of that baseline and try to take a mental note. There are even places in the Whoop app where you can check off things that you did that day, or you can actually put notes into your own Whoop app. And basically what you want to watch is if you see any particular days where your heart rate variability is better based on your baseline, don't compare yourself to other people, compare yourself to yourself. So for example, let's say that your heart rate variability is 15, 14, 16, somewhere around in there. And then you find that on a particular night, it's in the 20s, low 20s. And then the following Thursday, it's in the low 20s. Try to isolate what it is that you did on those days that improved your heart rate variability. 3 things that we know improve heart rate variability. 1, not eating 2 hours prior to bedtime seems to improve heart rate variability. Number 2 is consistent moderate intensity exercise. Definitely will improve heart rate variability over time. And then obviously sleep. Sleep is probably the most important. It's probably the foundation of just about everything. And so if you start to monitor your sleep, you'll see on the nights where your sleep score is higher that your heart rate variability was better. They almost go hand in hand. So I would play with this a little bit and sort of start taking, paying attention to the days that your heart rate variability is better than others. And your Whoop will alert you to the days where your heart rate variability based on your baseline is better, or your heart rate variability based on your baseline is a percentage lower. And just take note of what you did. One of the big killers of heart rate variability is alcohol, especially alcohol at night. Your heart rate variability will go into the single digits if you consume a lot of alcohol prior to bedtime.
That's happened. So I definitely have noticed that, and it's absolutely drastic. It's almost frightening, you know.
Isn't it crazy? It will. Yeah, it is. I'm glad that you said that and that everybody else is hearing that, because look, we know that no amount of alcohol is good for us. I'm not telling everybody that you need to be sober for the rest of your life. It's not practical. Once in a while, I have a tequila. Once in a great while, I have a glass of red wine. But the impact on your sleep of alcohol late at night is irrefutable. I mean, the worst thing you can do for your sleep pattern, if you really want to destroy your sleep pattern, consume alcohol before bedtime. Those people that say 2 glasses of wine actually is what I need to go to sleep, that's because alcohol is first a stimulant, then a depressant. Then it becomes a stimulant again while you're sleeping, because it raises your blood sugar and it lowers the acid. It increases the acid, but lowers the pH of the blood, all of which destroy heart rate variability. So the biggest single factor that you can do to improve heart rate variability if you're consuming alcohol at night is to stop consuming alcohol at night, or just take a little pause from alcohol. I'm glad that you noticed that, because it will push your heart rate variability into the single digits.
No, thank you. I definitely have seen that, and appreciate all the information and everything you do.
You got it, brother.
Yeah.
Great talking to you. Hey, man. Austin?
Hey, sir. Yes, sir.
Hey, Austin. How are you?
Good, sir. I appreciate you having me and hosting all this for us. I'm coming right after Joe, and Joe just asked pretty much the same question I had. So the only difference is when he talked about cold plunging multiple times a day. I know you spoke earlier about the temperature getting too low, down to 35, 36 degrees, but I've noticed for myself, and I don't keep track of every time I've cold plunged, but I don't think I've missed a day in over a year of doing it.
Right.
And if it's if the temperature is between 46 and 50 degrees, the way I feel physically when I get in doesn't feel the same as 35 degrees, obviously because it's colder, but I also don't get that initial shock. It's almost like I'm worried I'm creating I can't remember what it's called, but a thermal layer when I get in after about 30 to 45 seconds, because then it's just my body's numb and I don't feel like I'm getting that rush of energy as I do if I do it at 38 degrees. So that was the only caveat to what Joe asked.
Yeah. So look, it's definitely not dangerous for you to do that. So if you're more comfortable at a colder temperature, then by all means take the temperature colder. For the mass population, I just wanted to get the message out that colder is not necessarily better and longer is not necessarily better. People have a tendency to really want to push the envelope with just about everything: cold plunging, saunas, a lot of these modalities, red light. The hormetic stress comes right at the beginning, right? So what you're noticing is your hormetic stress threshold is a little bit higher than most people's. So in your case, by all means, take the temperature down lower. But for the majority of the population, it's just not necessary to get that cold. Just like it's not necessary to stay longer. I don't have a specific problem with it. If you're going to keep it that low, then definitely don't stay in for a prolonged period of time. How long are you going at 35 degrees?
5 minutes. That's my sweet spot. And when I hit 38 degrees, 5 minutes, then my workout afterwards is top notch.
Oh yeah, your workout's going to be gangbusters because think of what happens. You're flushing all of the toxins out of the muscles. So when you start your workout, you're working with fresh, new, highly oxygenated blood.
Right.
And you've gotten all of what we call metabolites, the muscle metabolites, the byproducts of muscle breakdown, creatinine and other things, blood urea, nitrogen. You've gotten that out of the muscles. So I think it's fine what you're doing. 5 minutes is perfect.
Okay.
I wouldn't go over 6. I would have 6 as a definite ceiling, but if you're only doing 3 to 5 minutes, you're right in the zip code.
Okay. And then if it's okay to ask one more thing real quick, do you have any tips on autism? I have a 4-year-old son with autism, and I've kind of paid attention to Dr. Sean Baker, Dr. Paul Saladino, and yourself, as well as there's one other guy that's a big carnivore diet guy. I can't remember his name, and I apologize for that. But we've gotten his autism diagnosis from a level 3 down to a level 1 just by changing his diet and supplementing for stuff that he can't process. We had some blood work done on him, but I didn't know if you had any tips just from your research that maybe I haven't explored yet.
So I would say 3 things. First of all, Paul Saladino does a lot on this. Actually, Paul just stayed with me for 5 days.
Yes.
He just left. Unfortunately, funny story. He was actually here and walked in one night on my wife's birthday, and we were having carrot cake. So I thought Paul Saladino was going to start to go and have a seizure, but he's a great guy, great friend. I'm a huge fan of Paul's. So 3 things. Number 1, autism is a neuroinflammatory disorder. Generally, the travel across the spectrum is related to the degree of neural inflammation. As the neuroinflammatory spectrum rises, so does the spectrum of autism, right? This is why you can go from barely noticeable types of symptoms, some like social awkwardness, all the way to being completely nonverbal. And so what you're experiencing, and when you are talking about the level of autism going down, is you're experiencing a reduction in that neuroinflammatory condition. One thing I would really consider doing, and you can Google this if you have a pen or something to write down, our head clinician, Dr. Sarda, I talk about her all the time, but she did it on her own son, are amniotic, amniotic stem cell injections. And there is an enormous amount. If you Google amniotic stem cell injections and autism, you'll see some really, really phenomenal results. Super important that you keep his level of inflammation down, things like colostrum. Carnivore is good because it's somewhat of an elimination diet, but remember, carnivore is not just meat, it's also fish, it's chicken.
Right.
It's a lot of animal-based sources, so eggs, berries. So things like that will be excellent for him because they don't cause a reaction. Allergy testing of what's called a KMBO test is also very good. I like the KMBO test because it doesn't just test the level of inflammation as it reacts to certain allergens in the blood. What it does is it takes into account his current state of inflammation. So let's say he's walking around at a 6. And something only causes a reaction of a 2, it only shows up on the test as a 2, as it should, right? Because you want to subtract the current state of inflammation before you determine what things are really pro-inflammatory. So that test is called a KMBO test. We do it. Lots of functional medicine doctors do it. But I would also consider, how old did you say he was?
He's 4 years old.
Oh my gosh, you're so lucky. Yeah. At 4 years old, I mean, way prepubescent. Catching autism in the prepubescent years will give you the greatest chance of actually having virtually no symptoms of autism at all by the time he's a prepubescent teen. So I'm really excited for you. It sounds like you're already receiving some of the blessings, but if you get a hold of this prior to puberty, then there's a chance that he'll be completely off the spectrum by the time he becomes a teenager. There are a lot of studies done on childhood obesity and childhood depression and other conditions that autoimmune diseases that prepubescent children say. And there's a saying, it's not you know, a scientific absolute, but so goes puberty, so goes the adult, right? They found that children that were morbidly obese throughout their entire time in puberty had a very difficult time as adults ever not being obese. The same thing with autoimmune, same thing with autism, same thing with all kinds of learning disabilities, ADD, ADHD, OCD, manic depression, bipolar. So, you know, the fact that he's 4 years old, you're going to have a healthy, happy, vibrant young man on your hands. You know,
awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
You got it. All right. Take care, my friend. Okay, we have 25 minutes left and 5 more questions to get through. So don't forget, we have to have our July rule breakfast call today from 1 to 2. So we can go over more questions, you know, on the rule breakfast call. So if you can't make it on the call, Rodin. Oh, they wrote in on rule breakfast. Okay. Okay, we need to have a spelling lesson for my staff behind the camera. What's that? Who's got an Ultimate Human shirt? Yes, dude. We are definitely. Can we send this man a cold plunge or some swag or something? Dude, absolutely. Look at him in the Charlie. I almost want to give you the XL cold plunge, but I'm resisting right now. But I'm going to send you. I'm going to send you some additional swag or a pop-up plunge or something. I might even buy you a G5. I love that shirt. What do you got today, buddy?
Well, I wanted to thank you guys. I did get you're sending me the cold plunge.
Yes, you deserve it. You're showing up with an Ultimate Human shirt.
So if you want to send the chiller, that'd be okay.
Okay.
My wife, I talked to you before about my wife has transverse myelitis, and I found as I try to buy this various equipment, I found a local superhuman protocol place. What would you recommend? You know, you can piecemeal, you know, the stuff you can use. What would you recommend a regimen for her to be?
So transverse myelitis, was this post-vaccination or she had it prior?
No, she had no, we're anti-vax, but
okay. So congratulations on that part. But so transverse myelitis, which is the you know, a condition with the peripheral spinal nerves for those people that are not.
And it's their lower.
Okay, lower spinal nerves. So the peripheral spinal nerves, you know, these are the nerves that are exiting the spine through something called the IVF, the intervertebral foramen. So this is an inflammatory condition there. I would highly recommend red light therapy. Of all of the portions of the superhuman protocol, if you actually Google, the term for red light therapy in the scientific literature is photobiomodulation. They love to complicate things. So photobiomodulation. If you Google photobiomodulation and transverse myelitis, you're going to see hordes of peer-reviewed studies on the impact of red light therapy and transverse myelitis. The interesting thing about transverse myelitis, like a lot of spinal conditions, is the compromised blood flow in these areas of the IVF and the facets and the peripheral exit of these spinal nerves is what causes this condition to proliferate. And so when you're in a red light therapy bed, especially if you have somebody that's advertising the superhuman protocol, that's a very specific protocol and it's a very specific type of light bed. They're going to be using something called a Theralight 360. That's the bed that I have. It's the most powerful light bed on the market. It has 45,000 light diodes, and they're very close together and they're very powerful. So you get about 3.5 inches of penetration into the skin, which will get all the way through the spine. So it will bathe the entire area of the periphery of the spine in red light. So I would do 20 minutes a day, as many days as possible. You know, scheduling dependent. If you have a center near you, we have access to one of these beds, 20 minutes a day. If they're open 6 days a week, I would go 6 days a week. It will become her favorite treatment of the day, right? I promise you. And the more you do it, the more profound the results.
Awesome. Thank you so much
for
all you do.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in an Ultimate Human shirt. I've seen him on here a bunch of times. Hi there. It just says DMB. So, and you're muted.
Oh, am I not?
Lower left-hand corner of your screen. Oh, you're good.
Oh, I'm good now. Okay. Yes. You have to, I have two questions basically. Do you have to add the ice to the bath? Do you have to add ice, or can you just use cold water like when you take a cold shower?
You can just use cold water. I find that when the majority of places don't have cold enough water, like when I'm out in Colorado, the water comes out of the glacier at 43 degrees. So that's great water. But what part of the country are you in?
Texas, San Antonio.
I'd be very surprised if your water is cold enough to not add ice. So that water's probably coming out of that. You say spigot in Texas, or instead of spout, but it's probably coming out of your spigot at, in the mid 70s to high 70s. So you actually do want to add ice. Get a little one of those, like I have a turtle thermometer. Get a little thermometer off of Amazon. They're about $6, maybe even less, and check the water temperature and just see if you can get it down into the 50s. Below 58 degrees is kind of what you're after. So take the ice and swirl it, let it dissolve, let it melt, and then check the temperature after the ice is melted and see that you're 58 or below, and then get in. My suspicion is there's probably not anywhere in Texas that has tap water that is cold enough to do a cold plunge. Southern and northern states, the folks up in Michigan, New York, southern and northern states, Washington, the water's nice and cold coming out of there. So I would say my suggestion would be to add ice until you get down below 58 degrees.
Okay. And can I use like a pool thermometer? Like I have a thermometer that I put in my pool. So that would be
absolutely. You can use a pool thermometer.
Okay. Yeah. And so the water that comes out of the shower, is that cold enough?
I'd be surprised if it's cold enough. The way that you can check is the water that comes out of the shower is the same temperature as the water that comes out of the sink. So you can actually just run the water for, 30 seconds, then plug your sink up and put a little bit of water in your sink and drop the thermometer into your sink and then check to see what that water temperature is. Look, a cold shower is better than nothing. A cold shower is better, but even taking a cold shower will give you some of the hormetic response. The best thing is cold shower, meaning 58-ish degrees, 60 degrees. It will give you really profound benefits. So if you've got an area where you're cold plunging, I would do two things. One, I would check the temperature of the water coming out of your faucet, and you can do that by running the water and filling up the sink and checking it. Or I would check the temperature in the cold plunge itself, and pretty soon you'll figure out how much ice you need. You're probably going to end up spending, $2 to $6 every time you do the cold plunge, depending on how much ice is necessary.
So you actually have to go out and buy ice every day then, if you're doing it every day?
No, I would actually, if you got the room in your freezer, I would just take Tupperware and I would just freeze blocks of ice, right? So take some Tupperware container and just fill them from your sink and seal it. You have to seal it and just put it in your refrigerator, and then you can get the ice over and over and over again. I mean, that's the most cost-effective way to do it, and it's less of a pain in the butt because you don't have to leave and drive to the store to get ice. Those big blocks of ice are really efficient. They take a little bit longer to melt, but they're super efficient. You can just press them down in the water, swirl them around, leave them there for a few minutes, and by the time they dissolve, they'll drop the temperature right down, and you can even fill the Tupperware container back up, and you're ready for the cold plunge the next day. It takes less than 24 hours in most freezers for that ice to be ready the next day. So if you just had a couple of Tupperware containers with those big blocks of ice, you'd find that you can do that over and over again.
Okay. All right. So when people do take the cold shower, it's not as effective then?
It's effective, but not as effective, right? So if you said good, better, best, cool shower, cold shower, cool plunge, cold plunge. Right. I mean, that's kind of how, you would get good, better, best. There's no reason to not do it if that's just what you have access to. But most of us have a bathtub. All of us have a freezer, and you can even take a bathtub, plug it up with the cold water, and take those Tupperwares of ice and swirl it around and let it in there. Then you're cold plunging for pennies a day.
Okay. And how deep do you have to submerge yourself in the tub?
You want to get the majority of your torso in. So if you're in a tub that, is too short for you to fully get in up to your neck, you actually, as soon as you get your carotids in, your carotid arteries are right here in your neck, that's when you're really getting the benefit. You can leave your hands out, but you want to try to get your neck submerged, preferably right up to your chin. right? But at least over your collarbone, somewhere in the range of your neck. You want that cool water on the carotids because you actually want to cause vasoconstriction there too. It's going to drive water into the, it's going to drive blood into the brain. So if you have a tub, don't worry about your knees coming out. Just get your torso in. Get the most mass that you can under the cold water. And if you've got those Tupperwares, freeze the Tupperware, throw them in your tub in the morning. You can even throw them in there the night before, and it will melt slowly through the night, and the cold plunge will be ready for you in the morning.
All right, so you just got to make sure the ice is melted then.
You want to make sure the ice is melted. That's the other thing. A lot of times I see people dump all the ice in, then they get in right away. And basically you get below the level of the ice and you're sitting in warmer water. You want to let it melt and swirl it around.
And that takes how long, you said?
Depends on what kind of ice you use. Bags of ice will evaporate a lot faster than blocks of ice. So if you use the big Tupperware blocks, I would actually put them in when you go to bed. And when you wake up in the morning, it'll be nice and cool.
Oh, wow, that early. Okay. And is it better to cold plunge in the morning or at night?
It's better to cold plunge in the morning. If you cold plunge at night, do it for 1 minute or less, right? Oh. Because you don't want a big spike of dopamine. You want a big rise in endorphins. You don't want a massive shivering response. There's a lot of studies, sleep studies, that say that the body has to cool about 2 degrees centigrade in order to get into deep sleep. So you can actually get to that baseline very quickly in a cold plunge. So if you cold plunge at night, I would go between 30 seconds and a minute max. In the morning, I would do 3 to 6 minutes. My preference is that you do the cold plunging in the morning because it gives you that dopamine rush throughout the rest of the day.
Okay. And my other question is the recording that we're doing, the question and answer sessions, are they, and also the chat, is that being recorded so that we can see it later?
Yes, it is being recorded. How do they get access to that? The rule breakers have access to that, right?
It's posted and they get a direct link sent to their email.
Okay, it's posted and you get a direct link sent to your email. And then you can watch it again. All right, awesome. Is it Sam? Who's next? Oh, hi. Sabrina? I think you're muted, Sabrina. Showing that you're muted. Bottom left-hand corner. Yeah, you're still muted. So usually it's in the bottom left-hand corner. You should see an unmute right next to the picture of the camera. You should be able to unmute yourself there. I can definitely see you. I just can't hear you. It might be also that you have your headset muted.
Yeah, we're sending her a notification.
Okay. We're sending you a notification that you can click on to unmute. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to put you back behind the next person. When you're unmuted, they're going to bring you back down. Hey, Sarah.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Good. So I've ordered the genetic testing and I haven't got it back yet, but I've been diagnosed with Hashimoto's about 15 years ago, IBS, leaky gut. I know I have MTHFR, so I probably have all 5.
Yeah.
Is it necessary to do like a gut protocol detox if you have things like SIBO, Candida, don't handle stress very well, struggling just to get in a workout? I'll sleep for like 6 hours afterwards. I had a lot of stressful things happen, so it's just a struggle lately.
Sure. So let me tell you my approach to this in general. And again, I think I've said this enough, but I'm not a physician. I'm not licensed to practice medicine, so I'm not really giving medical advice. But I will tell you what I've seen in my clinical team after years and years and years who are licensed to practice medicine. Philosophically, I take the approach that rarely does God make a mistake. And what I mean by that is that when you get diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, we're led to believe that you woke up one morning and your immune system began to manufacture antibodies to the colon. So now you have Crohn's disease. Or you woke up one day and your immune system is manufacturing antibodies to the thyroid, which is Hashimoto's. The question is, not, is the immune system manufacturing antibodies to some tissue in the body, right? If you manufacture antibodies to the lacrimal gland in the eye, you have Sjogren's. You manufacture antibodies to the colon, you have Crohn's disease. What I prefer to, the way that I prefer to approach this is to say that, well, God didn't make a mistake, meaning that the immune system is acting properly. We just need to figure out why it's there. So in other words, why would the immune system attack the thyroid? Did it just wake up one day and turn on the thyroid? Or did it wake up one day and there's a reason that the immune system was called to that location? One of the things, if you do any research, that you find very often in Hashimoto's is very high levels of, very often, and I'm not saying this is your case, but very high levels of heavy metals that have a tendency to embed themselves in the thyroid. Very often it is chronic viral infections that actually manifest themselves in the thyroid, and that's calling the immune system to that location. And so my preference would be to go on the journey to find out why the immune system is attacking that tissue, rather than hold the immune system responsible for a crime it's not committing and suppress the immune system, right? Which is very often what we do in these autoimmune diseases. So my suggestion would be that you think about heavy metal testing and you think about chronic viral testing. West Nile, Epstein-Barr, cytomegalovirus, and Lyme. Those are very, very, very often culprits in Hashimoto's, as are heavy metals. Interestingly, what happens in a lot of these cases is you get the metals out of the thyroid, you use metal and chemical-free cleanse, chelation, or other mechanisms, and the immune system calms right down. Crohn's disease, we see the same thing. The immune system is manufacturing antibodies to the colon, but not because it wants to attack the colon, because it's after bacteria or other pathogens that are leaking through the wall of the colon and are in an area where they don't belong, right? And so, very often what we do is we hold the security guard responsible for what the offender did, right? I mean, I always use the analogy that it's like a bouncer at a bar, right? The immune system, it says, listen, you can't go in there. And if you do, I'm going to throw you out. And so what happens is, if that offender still goes in, the bouncer goes in to get them out, and a fight ensues. And this is the inflammatory response, right? And it's the collateral damage, not the intended damage. That bouncer is trying to get the offender out of the bar. But what happens in this whole fight is you get all this inflammation and you get all of these other symptoms. And then we say you have an autoimmune disease, and we hold the bouncer responsible, right? We hold the immune system responsible for doing its job. And so what we want to do is support the immune system, try to find out what the offender is. And very often in Hashimoto's, it's heavy metals and chronic viral. So I would really encourage that kind of testing if you have access to it.
Yeah, I found out that I did heavy mold testing, or I did all of the testing. And so mold was a big thing. And then I had mono when I was younger. So Epstein-Barr is okay. So I was just trying to get your take also on like a gut protocol. I already have access to one.
Okay. Can I let the cat out of the bag about next month's challenge or no? Okay. My team said no. Well,
okay.
We're definitely, let me just say this. You're definitely going to want to participate in my next challenge.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll look for it.
Okay. Definitely participate in the next challenge. My team's like, don't say it. Don't say it. All right. We have 5 minutes left and I still have a few hands to get to, but I promise you we'll get to them on our rule breakfast call from 1 to 2. I'm going to jump off at 12:15 for a quick break before our rule breakfast call. But let's see if did we get? Oh, we did. We got you unmuted. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So we'll finish up with this question, then I'll see you guys on the rule breakfast call from 1 to 2.
So I turned 57 2 weeks ago on Friday, and so my birthday present the Sunday, 2 days later, was a kidney stone. So I went in, I passed it and everything, but they did a CT scan on me. When they did the CT scan, they found out that I had more kidney stones. I had gallstones, but I didn't have an issue with it. I do have my family has a history of that. And then I also had a severely degenerated disc in my lower back, which I'm going to start. I'm going for adjustment starting today on that. I did hear you speak yesterday regarding the kidney stones and the methylation vitamins and stuff. elaborate on that? Because when I was there, of course, the doctor was saying, I had too many minerals in my kidneys is the reason for that. So, being that I'm got the salt and everything, I'm using the mineral salts and everything. So just if you could follow up with that for me regarding the kidney stones.
So you're very correct to point out that kidney stones are not calcium, they are minerals. So they're actually mineral stones. And why would we have mineral stones in the kidney? Well, the kidney's job is to filter the blood 15 times every single day. The entire volume of your blood passes through both of your kidneys, right? So they filter the blood about 15 times a day, the full volume of the blood. One of the things that the kidneys do is they trap waste, right? And they demineralize it. It is a process of methylation, taking one mineral, combining it with other compounds, and turning it into a product, a waste product that your body can eliminate. When methylation is interrupted, then the process of breaking down these waste products is inhibited and crystalline structures form. These are mineral stones or kidney stones or gallstones. And so what they're not is they're not calcium, they're minerals. And there is no such thing as genetically inherited kidney stones. There is a such thing as genetically inherited methylation deficiency. This is one of the hallmarks of what I preach about. Very often we are told that disease is passed from generation to generation, and very often that's untrue. What's passed from generation to generation is the inability of the body to refine a raw material or break down a certain raw material, which leads to the expression of that disease. We fix the nutrient deficiency, we fix the disease because we fix the expression of that nutrient deficiency. We accept this line of thinking in plants, right? You pull nitrogen out of the soil in a plant, the leaf starts to rot. Well, there's nothing wrong with the leaf. The problem is in the soil, there's a nutrient deficiency. You replace the nitrogen and the leaf heals. So this kind of expression of disease is what runs in your family, not the disease of kidney stones. So just to clarify. And then, so the second thing I would do is, if you got yourself the genetic methylation test, that's the best thing that you can do because we're going to put the deficient raw material back in the human body, whether it's a B complex, a specific form of B12, a hydroxycobalamin, an adenosylcobalamin. We're going to put the specific form of methylfolate that your body needs, not folic acid. And very often when you give the kidney the raw material it needs to do its job, it demineralizes these things properly and you never build up another kidney stone.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm wondering the correlation because I'm having the issue with the gallstones as well as the kidney stones, which is kind of.
This is why, my line of thinking is that you don't have two problems. You have one problem causing two issues, right? Okay. I always think that we should look for the hub of the wheel rather than chase the spokes, right? So very often people that have severe gut dysbiosis have a mental disorder. I'm using this typical terminology. They have ADD or anxiety or anxiousness. Then they have a gut issue. Then they have a mood disorder, and then they have issues with their skin. And so you see this whole myriad of spokes leaving the same hub. The hub of the wheel is methylation. You fix methylation, very often you fix this whole myriad of symptoms. If you've been a rule breaker for any length of time and you've been on when some of these people have gotten on and talked about these life-changing experiences that they've had, some of them are mental illness, some of them are mood disorders, some of them are gut issues, some of them are skin issues, all kinds of different things. And the truth is they didn't really have those conditions. They had a nutrient deficiency that led to the expression of that condition.
Right. Well,
so getting the methylation test is the best thing you can do.
Yeah, I'm just waiting on that. So
super.
We did that about 5 weeks ago, just waiting on the results on it.
Okay, great. So
I appreciate it. Thank you. Yep, thanks for all your advice.
You're welcome. So thank you. Wow. This was another cold plunge challenge.